All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Really do appreciate it. Okay, so I guess we might as well get started. So, hey y'all, this is the River Roundtable coming to you again on Mondays. Got a nice, interesting group of people here. I think you'll like it. What we have for you. So a lot of regulars and I guess one new face here. Yeah, no, maybe two new faces in this particular panel. But in any case, yeah, we'll get rolling. So I'll introduce my illustrious guests. First, we have Riverboat Jack. Hey, Riverboat, how are you?
Hello. I am doing. I'm a bit under the weather actually. But I am functional for approximately 3 to 4 hours every day. So that's good. So I'm glad to be here to use my time wisely.
Awesome. All right. And you'll be completely pooped after this. Pretty much.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope you feel better, buddy.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Next, Know Nothing. I think for my long-time viewers, they'll be more familiar with Know Nothing. We used to have a lot of conversations in the past. Know Nothing, you don't come around too much anymore, but
Oh, I haven't been streaming the past few months, so
yeah,
not just you I'm missing out on.
yeah. Wired, I think we have like a lot of background noise coming from you. Maybe mute yourself. Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, Know Nothing. Well, one way or the other, always happy to have you around. Thanks for coming through. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah. Tiberius D. Hey, how are you doing today?
Doing good. It's been a while.
Yeah. I really like the black and red on you. I've seen you like with this outfit type thing, this black and red. Looks good on you.
I appreciate it, man. You want the introduction real quick? Or are we doing that later? We doing introductions or are we just talking?
I thought we were just talking.
All right, gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for being around. Really appreciate you coming through.
I'm glad to be
here. Yeah. Next, Wired Guitar. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Do you remember me?
Yeah. We've talked a few times. I think we first met on a No Comment Chick panel a long time ago, but we've talked a few times.
It was since panel, I think.
Oh, maybe it was since. Yeah, it was since actually. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Unfortunately, since it's not streamed like that anymore. But yeah. And you've come on my actual panel.
I don't think I have. I've only rated you.
You never come. I think you came. Whatever. Anyway,
this is my first time.
Yeah. Thank you for coming through, though. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Next, counterpoints. With that grizzly man beard going on, dude. I love it.
Yeah, I keep asking the wife when I'm supposed to shave, and she says no, keep it. And she's like, I was like, what? She's going for the Santa Claus look. I don't know why, but apparently it's a thing. So
yeah. Well, you look. Yeah, I think she's got good taste. You look really, really good with that.
Thanks. Much appreciated. No, very, very happy to be here. Anytime that I get to talk or debate politics on a day or a night, it's a great day and a great night. So thank you for having me again.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Moving on. Mix Vivian. Thanks for coming through once again. I'll always have to see you, friend.
No worries, Prime. Always a pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. I always feel like there's more to say with you. Like you're hiding so much, right? Like I feel like you're like a book I've only ever cracked like the cover, you know?
Nah, I've always got more to say. I've been trying to fucking rein it in, actually, because I realised that in some of these conversations I just go on large, meandering fucking rants and tangents, and it's not helpful. So today, I'm going to be concise, probably.
We'll see. I'll have to get proof of that. So next, last username coming through. Once again, I haven't seen last username in a few weeks, but we're always happy to have LU. LU, yes, your hair is it's a new thing is happening with it. So maybe did you maybe have you
Every
just simply
day.
pumped it? Is that what you done? If you simply like, is it the same volume but just like on one side of your face?
I was trying to like get it to do something, and it got it to do this, so it's doing this. I don't know.
I don't know.
I got fed up eventually, and just said, this will do.
Always happy to have you around, last year's name. It's always fun talking to you.
Always good to be here, except when it's not, but it is usually.
All right. Well, let's see what kind of type of day it is today. Next, last but certainly not least, right? If you're wondering what that fiendish creature on the side of your screen is, it is the representation of the soul of the man known as Doobie. Doobie, thanks for coming around once again.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, yeah. How you doing today?
Good. Just wrapped up a very busy work day, and ready to dive into these topics.
Okay, great, fantastic. All right, yeah. So, you guys.
What is Doobie represented by on your screen? What is it supposed to be? It's just like a snot bubble with the Christmas hat on? What is it?
I don't know.
It's usually pink, right? But it's Christmas, so I figured I'd go green with the Santa hat. I've got many versions of it. I got like an anime one. I've got a communist one. I've got like a ton of them that just random people on the server make me, and I just use it. So
Gotcha.
That's a terrifying homunculus.
It fits the man well. Okay. All right, so we'll roll on through, and we'll get started with our very first topic of the day. Topic 1. On Saturday, 2 historic black churches were vandalized when pro-Trump demonstrators tore down BLM banners and set them on fire. This has been denounced as an act of hate. But is there any difference between this and the destruction of statues that occurred earlier this year? Is this simply an exercise of free speech like any other? Should any actions be taken against these protesters? Okay. Curious where you guys will take this. We'll start with Riverboat Jack.
I mean, I think this is a bit different than tearing down like public property, for example, because in some ways public property tends to be accountable to the public, and I think that a public action of tearing down public statues is something that largely can be construed as like an act of reclamation by the people, whereas going onto private property of like church grounds and defacing churches, I think steps over that line into something that should be prosecutable, that should be these people who did this should be held accountable for this. And also, by the way, like there is an element of protest where if you did pull down a statue and like you want to stand for your beliefs, you should be like willing to be prosecuted for that as well. So I think that this is different than the case of the statues being pulled down, but I think that this is more aggressive than statues being pulled down, and I think it violates some more public or some more private rights than statues being pulled down. But I'm interested to hear what other people have to say because my mind could be swayed on this.
Okay, no, nothing.
Yeah, I mean, like they're obviously very different things. Like, what you have to look at is like the intent behind it. Like, if I like. Punching a person is illegal, right? But if I go and punch someone because they're a Nazi and they're like yelling slurs against me, that's very different than punching someone because they wish me a good morning. Like, even though they're both punching a person. Like here, both of them are vandalizing property, but vandalizing statues that for you at least represent oppression, like if it's a Confederate statue and evil, that is very different than vandalizing a Black Lives Matter church or whatever they did. So yeah, very different. Obviously, both should be prosecuted. Like both, you break the law. But if we're talking morality, then yeah, vandalizing a church is much worse.
Okay, but remember, so in case you didn't read the article, the the vandalization, what's called vandalization, was them ripping down banners, BLM banners, and then setting those on fire. So as far as I know, they didn't like spray paint the church or anything like that. All they did was take down a symbol, all right, and comparing that to the symbol of those historical figures that have been taken down. So I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. Okay, thank you for that. Next is Tiberius.
On general, is there a number of differences? Yes. Simply defending Confederates is a bit of a stretch. I'm never going to do that kind of thing. Is this free speech? No, this is destruction of property. These people should be arrested and charged. I'll just roll with that.
Okay. Next, Wired.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways in which these two situations are totally different. I actually read the article as well, and I saw that in addition to vandalism, protesters were also, one of them I think was charged with assault with a deadly weapon. We could not talk about that, though. I understand if we're just strictly trying to compare the vandalism of the church to the vandalism of monuments, then I'm interested in doing that as well. A lot of ways in which that's different. One of the ways in which it's different is this year we saw Trump signed in an executive order, June 26th, with the purpose to prosecute to the full extent of the law those who did tear down federal statues or vandalize them in any way, with penalties of up to 10 years in prison time. And so I looked up in New York what the statute for penalty of vandalism was, and that was up to 4 years in prison. So obviously, in the extent of the law, we seem to care a lot more about federal statues than we do about private prisons, or sorry, not private prisons, about progressive churches, historically black churches in New York. And then another way in which it's different is just the ways in which these acts were carried out. This was not just like straight up. This wasn't vandalism in the sense that like you accidentally throw your softball through your neighbor's window and kind of have to get kicked with a like a 18-year-old vandalism charge. This is like a full on. We're marching down the street in troves with Proud Boy symbolism, fascist symbolism, walking up to a private church, or sorry, well, it was a private church, but also a progressive church, historically black church, with the intent of doing harm, right? With the intent of tearing down banners that are on the church and letting them setting them ablaze. It's a very targeted offense. I guess it's similar to the ways in which the tearing down of federal statues is a targeted offense, but an intent to incite fear and hatred in the minds of those that the targets was against. Whereas in the case of the federal statutes, I don't think anybody's trying to attack anyone in particular, but rather the overall ideology behind keeping war memorials to dead men that have been that have been dead for hundreds of years, that represented probably the very same racist things that these individuals are chanting for. So those are the ways in which I see them different. Be interested to hear what you guys think.
Counterpoints.
Yeah, no, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the thing that I want to see out of this conversation is hopefully maybe not this conversation, but the country over the next few years is a kind of return to norms where taking other people's shit and setting it on fire or ripping things down is kind of bad. But I would also like to see some leadership on behalf of the people inside the United States where we recognize, hey, maybe the Confederacy or Confederate monuments that were put up during the Reconstruction era or were put up during the period of Reclamation, maybe these need to come down and they need to be put in a museum because basically if we're trying to preserve history, we shouldn't be trying to preserve history as in revering the Confederacy. We should be trying to preserve history as in, hey, there's this whole fucked up history that we haven't talked about inside the United States, and let's go ahead and have an actual conversation about what it means and when these things were put up, because that's what Trump and a lot of the MAGA people kind of fell behind was this, oh, we're just honoring history, and Robert E. Lee is a hero to many people in the South, and all that kind of bullshit, where this conversation really gets lost in symbols and rhetoric and perception. And while I'll probably largely agree with most of the people on this panel about those perceptions, we need to find a way where hopefully you don't have to tear down fucking statues because they're already down. And we've already had a national conversation about what these things mean and what we want out of our country going forward.
All right. Mixed freedom of.
Sure, yeah. So, yeah, I think it's important to place it in context, as somebody else already said. This wasn't simply an act of tearing down banners in front of a church. This was part of an action by fascist street gangs, essentially, to roam the neighborhoods and terrorize people who dare to support the Black Lives Matter movement. This was part of an ongoing action which resulted in, 5 people being stabbed? And the last time they descended on DC, there was like a further 3 people who were stabbed by the Proud Boys. So they're escalating, right? And last time they were in DC, they also trashed Black Lives Matter Plaza. It's pretty clear that they're very vehemently opposed to the Black Lives Matter movement. Some of them probably because there is a significant fucking neo-Nazi wing within the Proud Boys, and some of them because they just equate Black Lives Matter to Antifa and to leftists in general. But either way, the intent is the same. The intent is to, stoke fear, hatred, and terror in their political opponents. And I mean, it's not the same as tearing down a statue. Tearing down a statue to eliminate a monument to hate, as opposed to engaging in a campaign of violence and destruction of anything that would indicate support for a progressive movement, the civil rights of Black people. These are 2 very, very different situations. And I think that you're seeing in America right now a genuine rising threat of these groups that isn't going to be curbed by the incoming Biden administration. And there needs to be a serious conversation had about what to do with sort of far-right extremist groups in general who are growing bolder by the second.
Okay, last username.
Yeah, so burning other people's property, tearing down other people's property is bad. Don't do that. I'm slightly more sympathetic if you're vandalizing government property, which I guess some of these statues were. Maybe a lot more sympathetic. But I don't think this is a speech issue in any case. This is a vandalism issue. So, we can talk about the issue of, public statues. I think you can definitely make a moral case for that. But private property, vandalizing private property, no, it's not speech at all. And I don't know what, who did this exactly or what point they were trying to make, but burning banners that are hanging on a church is a really, really bad look. If you want to criticize BLM, sure, go ahead, but use your words. Burning things is not good.
Okay. Doobie.
Okay, so I actually think obviously it's bad, right? You shouldn't vandalize things. But I think painting this entire event is like some kind of fascist uprising that had Proud Boys stabbing people in the streets. It's just not true. The people that were stabbed were Proud Boys, and they were stabbed by a BLM supporter wearing the Black Bloc Antifa shit. Right, it's on video. Right, to say that this is a Proud Boy stabbing people is just ridiculous. So that's the opposite of what happened. I actually think that what BLM did, I don't want to say BLM because it's not fair to tar the entire organization with the actions of like individual protesters who decided to tear down some statues. I don't think it's fair to tarnish the entire organization with that. So I'm going to say what these protesters did in the name of BLM is much worse than what happened over the weekend. Just in terms of like, this is public property. They actually destroyed many of these statues. It cost thousands of dollars to repair and replace. I think putting that at the same level as tearing down a couple plastic signs and burning them while flipping them off in the street it's bad, but it's not as bad, I don't think. But either way, all these people should be charged.
Okay. All right. Open to the floor.
I actually think that last year's username made a really good point in regards to like the optics of this are very, very different from like the Proud Boy end and from the BLM end, because on the one hand you have a historic civil rights protest movement marching on these statues, tearing them down, statues of slave owners and white supremacists and people who rebelled against the United States of America, literal rebels to the Republic, who killed thousands of Americans with their actions. And then on the other hand, you have people who are, violating church property and burning down like banners that represent a movement. Again, that is in support of rectifying the historic wrong that has been done to African Americans in the United States of America. So, like from an optics perspective, it's very, very different.
Can I address optics from the right? So, Doobie, first off, I'm insulted because that Proud Boy member wasn't stabbed by a member of Antifa. He was stabbed by an idea. Okay, so to describe it to Antifa actions at all, is kind of nuts here.
Yeah,
but moving on from memes, no, from the right, there is a perception of basically like. A lot of people don't understand the concept of whiteness versus being white. A lot of people don't understand the concepts of Black Lives Matter, the movement, versus Black Lives Matter, the incorporated website that talks about the nuclear family. A lot of people don't make this differentiation. And if you're asking me, do I think Antifa or whatever are super soldiers who are going to destroy America? No, I don't. But that kind of is the perception from the opposite side. So when people rip down Black Lives Matter banners and they burn them, they think they're burning, a racist communist revolution inside the United States or destroying the symbols of that communist revolution. And then same thing with the Antifa getting into the street scraps. They don't think of it as a bunch of college nerds who get together in order to protest fascism. They think of them as, communist super soldiers who are taking over the United States in conjunction with, the communist CEO of Antifa, Joseph R. Biden.
All weak soy boy sissies, right? Like, don't forget that. Yeah.
Well, but it has to be both.
Totally ineffectual and can't do anything, whilst at the same time being communist super soldiers about to take over the US fucking Red Dawn style.
They're gnarl-pan soy boys, and they're also super soldiers.
That's not.
You guys were saying that the person that stabbed, there was 4 stabbings. So I'm curious as to how you guys suddenly have, I guess, the seance of knowing that all 4 of them were Antifa members. Because
it's because I actually read the article and then I looked up the sources that were in the article, and the name of the actual protester was accused of doing the stabbing because he was arrested, and he's accused of stabbing four people during a fight where he might have been defending himself. It looks like he was defending himself, right? Please, I'm not done. From people who were yelling at him. Falling down the street, right? So maybe you could say he acted in self-defense. I don't know enough. I haven't seen enough of the video to know if that's the case. But what I do know is that he wasn't a Proud Boy, right? So to paint this event as Proud Boy on the street stabbing people.
I never said the Proud Boys stabbed people in this protest. I said people got stabbed. No. I'm saying they got stabbed as a result of the Proud Boys patrolling fucking streets looking for people to beat up. Like, that's literally what they were doing down in DC last time they were there, during the quote-unquote million MAGA march that attracted about 10,000 people, and during this one, right? And when they surround a fucking dude and start trying to beat him up and he pulls out a fucking knife, that's the kind of shit that's to be expected, honestly, because otherwise he could have got the shit kicked out of him. But it doesn't really matter whether it was in self-defense or not. What matters is that 4 people were seriously fucking injured because of the actions of a roving gang of fascist thugs.
Okay. And real quick, I just wanted to say, I find it very interesting that I started talking, you interrupted me, Doobie, and then you accused me of interrupting you when I was trying to get the full word of what I was saying.
I didn't accuse you of interrupting me.
You said, okay. Well, what I was going to say was that I'm still looking for information. I'm still looking for information that proves that Philip Johnson was associated with the Antifa or anything, because I can't find anything about that. Yes, it is true that 2 of the 4 people that were stabbed were affiliated with Proud Boys, and it sucks that people in general are getting stabbed, whether they're affiliated with the Proud Boys or Antifa doesn't matter. And violence is bad. I think we can all agree about on that subject here. But I'm wondering where this notion that it's the Proud Boys that are the victims here because they're the ones getting stabbed, and yeah, they're causing vandalism, but look at what happens at their protests. They're always getting persecuted. Do we have any evidence that it's actually Proud Boys that are not, or sorry, that it was Antifa that's committing these stabbing?
we
Antifa
can't
organization.
make a logical leap here. Like seriously, like
What?
this is kind of frustrating because like I'm borderline on your side, but like
You're not on my side.
It's so, okay. It's so
You joked
weird.
earlier. You
It's
made
so
a meme
weird
earlier
that
about
people keep getting stabbed and beat up by ideas. It's just it's such a bad
proves that
meme.
you're not on my side.
Wait,
Okay, cool.
what's the
So I'm
idea
not on your
giving
fucking side. I don't
Antifa-
give a shit. But at the same time, it's like, seriously, there's people, like, we did this whole thing last time, and maybe we can just skip it so we don't waste 40 minutes doing the same shit we did last time. I say that there's some people who have a nebulous array of beliefs, who dress in similar clothing, who show up in an area, but we can't criticize these people because it's a nebulous idea. And
Yeah,
then
you can
and then you just
criticize the
call it an
people.
idea
No, you
over
can
and over again, and I
absolutely-
just chase your tail.
No, you can absolutely criticize those people.
But you're saying he's Antifa.
question
What it looks
is-
like to me, based on like the research I've just like did, is that he was walking down the street, which is something anybody can do. You don't have to be Antifa to walk down the street. And then a group of like 100 Proud Boys surrounded him.
Yeah. So I'm just again.
And
I'm
then
looking.
they saw he got a knife and they attacked him. So like
Right.
that's not an Antifa person stabbing Proud
Yeah.
Boys. That's Proud Boys attacking an Antifa, not even an Antifa person, just a normal person who you're guessing is Antifa for some reason, and him defending himself.
This is it's perfectly reasonable to ask counterpoints like whether or not this person had any kind of like anti-fascist leanings, whether they
I wasn't there. I don't know.
Ideology.
I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I
exactly.
agree.
You
I
don't
just in
fucking
general
know.
agree with you that gangs of people armed with sticks and knives and pipe bomb. Oh wait, you don't agree with me on this. So I believe that gangs of people dressing up and going downtown with sticks and knives and fireworks and all that kind of shit to set stuff on fire and beat the fuck out of each other is in general a bad idea. Like that's my radical position.
And my radical position is that I agree with you, but that we see it from the right in this particular instance, and we haven't seen it at all from that. Again, you and Doobie have both failed to substantiate the point that you and Doobie have both failed to substantiate the point that Antifa is involved in any of the violence happening here. We have literal video and typographical evidence that it is in fact the Proud Boys that were involved in both of the instances of arson and vandalism that happened here.
Can we macro this? Can we zoom out?
And a MAGA dude shot somebody as well.
You're asking if we can look at other rallies. Why the fuck would we defer to other rallies? This is what we're talking about. We can talk about other rallies. We can talk about any of the numerous rallies that the Proud Boys have been involved in that have had stabbings, literal deaths. We can talk about Heather Heyer if you want to. Or we could talk about micro, which is what the topic of this particular conversation is. We can talk about the FBI. We can talk about the FBI.
Arbitrarily pick boundaries for a conversation.
This was the topic of the conversation. If you're upset about it, you can just wait until the next one. I'm sorry, but like even if you don't,
why are you presuming I have an emotional reaction about this? Why don't we just talk?
Okay. I am just talking. I'm just talking about.
Okay, well, you're trying to set an artificial boundary for no fucking reason that I can understand.
There's no artificial boundary.
Okay,
if you want to talk micro, we can talk about what the FBI identifies as more. But...
Sure, let's do that. Let's talk about that.
Doobie.
I don't think you win there, but
okay. So my position, right? I think I don't think it's that far logical leap to make the assumption that if there is a pro-Trump rally with Proud Boys and all these other people, and there are Antifa groups and BLM supporters on the other side, that someone who's part of the counter-protest might be affiliated with BLM or Antifa, right? Especially when this guy is wearing the face mask, all the typical Antifa nonsense.
Yeah, wearing a face mask during the pandemic.
Don't pretend this isn't like don't pretend the black block thing isn't real, right? Don't do that. That's
who's pretending black bloc is real?
I really
so we know that Antifa affiliated people were at this protest or counter protest. We know that they wear the black bloc shit, which they cover their face, they wear all black, which is exactly what this man was doing. Like what? I don't understand why you guys are pretending
when you say
this is just some random ass dude that just happens to be on the street during this massive demonstration. What are you talking about?
I have the police report right here if you want to look at it.
Because it's perfectly reasonable that somebody might have been walking down the street wearing a fucking mask because we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's perfectly reasonable that this person might not have had anything to fucking do with either BLM or Antifa. You just don't fucking know, right?
Well,
So
and
when you say it's
also,
perfectly reasonable to make a logical leap that this person was definitely like an anti-fascist of some description, that's not a logical leap to make when it's perfectly reasonable that they could have been something else.
So
You simply don't know. For the record, it doesn't fucking matter, right? Because even if that person was Antifa, right, then them being surrounded by a gang of fucking fascist thugs
And getting
and
pushed
drawing
around.
a knife to defend themselves would have been perfectly fucking reasonable anyway.
If we
yeah,
believe
that,
it's
that,
Okay,
that-
well, that's
that's
China's
basically
separate.
the point I was
separate
gonna
from the-
step in and make.
go ahead.
Like, if somebody is walking down the street, regardless of if they're Antifa or if they're, you know, even if they're a fascist thug Proud Boy, if you're walking down the street and 100 people surround you and try and beat the shit out of you, you're perfectly justified in defending yourself. So like, you know, the idea that it's somehow okay for this to happen is really
That's
weird
not
to
what
me.
I
And
said.
yeah, but I mean, I'm kind of like I don't know why we're having this argument. I guess like
Well,
when-
we're having this argument because Doobie tried to denigrate the idea that we ought to be concerned about gangs of fucking fascist thugs descending
That's
on cities and engaging in violence and vandalism. Like, we genuinely should be fucking concerned of that. And regardless of whether or not the person who committed the stabbings was fucking Antifa or not, the stabbings were a direct result of this kind of activity. The kind of activity that was emboldened by the Trump
this is what I have a problem with, right?
that is wait, I'm almost done.
Okay,
That is in fact encouraged by Biden taking office, and these groups are getting bolder and bolder, and we need to have a serious fucking conversation, a serious think about like how the fuck do we deal with this, because it's going to keep happening. All right, it's not going to fucking
Okay.
stop
So
unless
you're still going. Okay.
before
So can I please-
before you go into this, because I
Sure.
know it's going to be a while before I get to talk again.
Sorry.
Like I need to point out that people do live around these areas. Like this is a place where people live and go to work, and you know, people need to pass through some of these areas to get where they need to go. And on top of that, while I do think it might be reasonable to say like, oh, this person was dressed in black bloc, and so they are an Antifa protester, counter protester. I think that it takes a little bit more than like, oh, this person was wearing black, and so that means that they are affiliated with this group. Whereas opposed to like talking about the Proud Boys, where they're literally wearing like shirts with the insignia of the group on it. So I just think that there is a bit more of like burden of proof that needs to be done to affiliate someone with Antifa rather than the Proud Boys in this case.
Yeah, because let's not forget what happens when somebody is like.
Okay, can I go, please?
Yeah. Yeah, let's
Okay.
Doobie, please.
So I think the issue again is that all we know, based on this video, is that this man was on his own, wearing the typical black bloc shit. He's described as a counter protester in every article I've read about this. He's described as a counter protester by the police, right? So I don't think it's that far elite to just from those statements that the police have made, that these journalists have made, that I assume have done the research into who this person is and why he was at this protest. If they say he's a counter protester and we have on video saying that he's had some kind of conflict with these Proud Boys, whether or not he was justified in defending himself, and based on the video, I agree he might have been justified in defending himself. It looks like that woman grabbed his face mask and was trying to pull it off for no reason. Right, so he might have been totally justified in defending himself with a knife. That's totally okay. I'm also not okay with gangs of people just roving the street and beating people up. Right, that's not something I agree with. But the reason we're having this little argument is because Vivian at the start dishonestly implied, I think, that the Proud Boys were there stabbing people. Now, if you're going to say that people were stabbed due to the actions of the Proud Boys, you know, and because of their having these demonstrations, that's kind of like, I think that's a really bad road for you to go down, given what has happened across the country at BLM protests, BLM rallies, that at like anti-fascist rallies all over the country, where people have been stabbed, shot, buildings have been destroyed. I don't think you want these organizations to be saddled with the responsibility of what these stupid people do that happen to show up at the rallies. Right? I don't think it's the position
I mean,
of police. I don't think it's the position of the Proud Boys as an organization that they should march down the street and beat up random citizens.
Yeah, no, actually, it fucking is.
No, it's
Actually,
not.
it is. Because
No,
part
it's
of your fucking initiation is to get in a fucking fight, to get in a street brawl.
Not
The
with a
Proud
random
Boys-
citizen.
Proud Boys as an organization, like, are set up specifically to do violence unto other people.
Which
Right?
people?
to Antifa, to communists.
Random
Oh,
citizens, dude.
Okay, so the reason this is the way that you guys are framing the Proud Boys even is, I think, dishonest, or maybe you just don't understand what the movement actually does. Right, it was a little group is actually around for, what the purposes. They came into being after we had groups of Antifa, people who affiliated themselves with Antifa, going all over the country to Trump rallies and beating the shit out of Trump supporters, right? Beating the shit out of just random citizens who are showing up to rallies, right? I think the worst of it was Milo Yiannopoulos' planned lecture at Berkeley, when you had hundreds of these people beating people who were standing in line, beating people with sticks, throwing fucking guardrails at them, right? And then after that, I think a couple months later, you had all these conservative and libertarian groups show up,
Yeah,
right?
so
To fight specifically, Antifa, please, no, listen, to fight specifically Antifa members who they felt were violently suppressing free speech. Right, so that's why this group exists. Not to attack random citizens on the street, not to attack random Biden supporters, to specifically counter violent Antifa affiliated communists who go out and beat people up for expressing themselves.
Shut up, Doobie.
That's why they exist.
Okay, so hold on. There's a little more than that to the
Gross
problem.
fucking misrepresentation of like some of the events that went on at Berkeley. It's beyond fucking dishonest, because the violence was coming from absolutely from both sides there, and that
That's
there
not
was.
true.
I mean, it literally is. You can fucking watch the videos. There were multiple fucking white nationalists. Your fucking Pal Fuentes was fucking down there, right?
You just
Like,
the police reports
Down
too.
there where? Down there
Yeah.
where? At Berkeley during Milo? Nobody was there. Milo
Yeah, there
Yiannopoulos was going to have
there
a
were a
lecture.
couple of rallies
that-
at Berkeley, by the way.
There are three of them.
Okay,
It's
so
called, like, literally
there's
called the Battle of Berkeley.
there's like a moral prescription here where like I would be on the fucking side of the people who would basically be saying, hey, this is all fucking bad shit and we shouldn't be doing it. But I don't think there's any descriptive thing that Doobie just said that was inaccurate. The Proud Boys were founded because of Antifa beating the fuck out of normies. Like, it's
yeah, just
Hey,
not
I
the
mean,
But
can I just
Random-
interject
they're just
really
providing
quick?
security,
Like,
and
if
they don't
Proud-
need
Proud-
an initiation
Proud Boys were
ritual that
literally
involves
founded
getting in a
by
fight,
a
right?
neo-Nazi. Like,
which
Gavin
one?
McGinnis is not a
Gavin
neo-Nazi.
McGinnis. Gavin
He's not a
McGinnis
neo-Nazi.
is
Not a
a
neo-Nazi.
That's ridiculous.
neo-Nazi.
Yeah, I know
No,
you've-
he's
I know
not. That's fucking
I
ridiculous.
know you've had him for your AMA on your fucking server
He's not
and
that-
shit.
He's
but
not a
I'm
neo-Nazi.
not
I've
the
had
one-
actual neo-Nazis on my server. He's not a neo-Nazi. The
I'm
Proud Boys are not a
I'm not
fascist
the one-
organization.
I'm not the one sitting there with fucking fascist tattoos and fucking wearing a screwdriver t-shirt and shit. Fucking Gavin McInnes is at the very least very sympathetic to neo-Nazis. All right? So don't give me that fucking horse shit. He spouts the same kind of
You can
fascist
repeat it
forward
angrily.
Western
It doesn't make him more true. He's not a Nazi.
rhetoric.
I mean, he
I can't believe-
does.
I-
If he's not a neo-Nazi, then people can be
I-
forgiven
I-
for lumping him in with
Very
neo-Nazis.
sympathetic.
When
to
he
them.
Well, then
wears
people
like
can be forgiven
neo-Nazi
for mischaracterizing
memorabilia,
anyone, right?
he
Like,
like
no,
wears
you can't
Can I
neo-Nazi
help?
band
That's not a good thing
members,
to do.
etc.
Oh,
Can I help the lefties rhetorically here a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, you can feel free. I mean, I would call Gavin McInnes a fascist who is very sympathetic to neo-Nazis. I think
mean,
that's
here's-
a
can I just
perfectly
give a quote from
reasonable
Gavin
description of
McInnes?
him. I think if
I've
you
got
think that
ton
there's some
of-
sort of like rhetorically better way to describe him, I would say that you're probably going to be like hedging and trying to, water down how bad he actually fucking is.
Okay.
This is
So
a
we'll
quote
go
from
this. No Nothing hasn't talked for a while, so go No Nothing, then we'll go to counterpoints. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to give a quote to the idea that he's like not associated with Nazis and isn't. He's quote, I've got a ton of Nazi friends. David Duke and all the Nazis totally think I rock. I mean, like
No
you say
offense,
he has
Nazi.
Nazi friends and the Nazis
Feeling.
love him.
Okay. So Gavin McInnes voluntarily associating with American Renaissance and Jared Taylor is fucking gross, and it's basically like incorrigible. So I don't understand why you would do that. So this is kind of the let me break down this dichotomy real quick, okay? When you accuse somebody of being a Nazi, they're going to say, I'm not a Nazi because I'm not a German fascist who was around in the 1930s or 1940s. It's a rhetorical shell game.
Yeah.
Whereas if you accuse somebody of being a fascist, they might actually concede it because fascism is ethno-corporatism and political corporatism and authoritarianism. It's like a very specific definition. So there will be American fascists who will say, I'm not a neo-Nazi. And what they really mean is, I'm not a Nazi. I'm a fascist, but I'm not a Nazi. And then here's the problem specifically with the Proud Boys. Mix, I'm trying to give you ammunition. Let me give you ammunition. Jesus
I don't need your fucking ammunition.
You're telling me off then, and I'll tell you something interesting, Mix. Christ. Okay. So,
Viv, stop, please. I'll have to mute you. Like I want him to be able to finish. Please go ahead.
Okay. So the interesting thing about the Proud Boys specifically, if you notice that their uniform is yellow and black. Yellow and black is typically associated with anarcho-capitalism. It's typically associated with libertarianism, and there's a shitload of people who are members of or who subscribe to libertarianism who identify with the Proud Boys or whatever because they want the opportunity to kick the shit out of fucking communists. That's really what they want. But the problem is that it doesn't make sense if you're a libertarian and you support Trump, because Trump isn't a libertarian. He's probably a fucking fascist. And then it's the same thing, like you support, Gavin McInnes, or you associate with American Renaissance, or you associate with American fascist groups and all that kind of shit. So some of these people are so fucking confused that they don't even know what they are. So they'll tell you that they're fucking libertarian while they're running around like going elbow to elbow with fascists and then beating the fuck out of leftist protesters. So that's my interesting factoid. Take it away.
I mean, like it's. I agree with you on a lot of those points. The main issue is that like a lot of people play, especially neo-Nazis, they play like the definitions game. They're like, oh, I'm not a neo-Nazi, I'm a paleo-conservative. Or like you can talk with someone who is actually a neo-Nazi, but they'll initially describe their political position to you as a moderate conservative. And like there are a lot of these people out there. So I have no doubt that Gavin McInnes doesn't describe himself as a neo-Nazi. But given the things that he does, it's pretty apparent that he is either a neo-Nazi or he's very, very okay with being associated with neo-Nazis. Which
he's at least a fellow traveler.
The problem is if you're willing to just
traveler.
I don't even know why we're getting in like the conversation about whether Gavin McInnes is a Nazi.
The problem is if you're willing to just to say, I don't care what you say, I'm going to decide what you believe and what your position is based on
no.
on some
That's
colors
not
that you
what's
roll or
happening.
something like that. That is what's
That's not what's happening. It's somebody stating their fucking positions and going, hey, those positions are what constitute fascism, and then going, oh no, right?
Like, okay, which position does Gavin have that would make him adjacent to Nazis?
He says he likes Nazis. He has Nazi friends. He has a video titled 10 Reasons I Hate Jews.
Have you watched it? Hold on. Okay, you're reading off the Rational Wiki thing. Have you watched any of those videos for context? Or did you see the context when he made that comment about David Duke liking him and shit? It was literally a fucking ironic, right? He was making a joke. It's in the fucking video, right? If he has other videos where he listen. He has other videos and other segments where he totally shits on white nationalists and neo-Nazis. He's done that dozens of times, right? So to call him a neo-Nazi because he made a joke about David Duke liking him is fucking ridiculous.
I wouldn't call him a neo-Nazi. I'd say sympathetic to neo-Nazis is a fascist.
Doobie, can we admit that he's written an article in American Renaissance specifically about race realism?
When?
I'll fucking pull it up.
Look, Doobie's like far gone. I just have two very important questions I need answered. First of all, what is the meaningful distinction between labeling Gavin McInnes a fascist outright and just like a crypto fascist? Like at this point, does it even matter? We all, I think most, if not everybody here, except for Doobie, thinks that he's at least either a crypto fascist or just straight up a fascist. Right? I'm in the latter camp. And then the second question
I don't think he's a crypto fascist.
What do you think he's not a fascist then either? Are you just
what do you mean by like a secret fascist? Someone who thinks to themselves they're a fascist, but they won't admit it?
That is the rudimentary definition, I suppose.
Wait, what do you guys even mean by fascist? You mean just like a nationalist? Like, what do you mean by fascist?
No, like an ultra national ethno nationalist, like ultra
fascist in the Umberto Eco sense.
Like,
okay, so again,
in the American academic sense.
What has Gavin McInnes said that leads you to believe he's an ethno-nat?
No, let's not play the shell game. Let's move on.
It's not even a shell game. This is a problem, right? You guys, I think Riverboat Jack is correct.
No, you see, the problem
Nazis tend to play word games, right?
In defense of violence.
I'm not lying. I've asked you specific questions and haven't been able to answer them. I'm not lying. I think Riverboat Jack is correct, and that actual Nazis. Oh my god!
Right. This is happening. I'm muting people. Okay, I'm muting people. I will unmute you when one person's done talking. Okay. So finish your point, Doobie. Blue might try to move on to, because I'm not sure how far we can get trying to find Gavin McInnes. Like, I don't know how people will all be. Yeah. So go ahead, finish your point, and then we'll move on from there.
Okay, so I was semi-agreeing with Riverboat Jack, right? Nazis, actual Nazis and ethno-nats do play word games, right? Though they say, "Oh, I'm not a Nazi. I'm a nationalist with socialist tendencies." Oh, I'm not an ethno-nat. I just really care about freedom of association. Stupid shit like that, right? They do that all the time. But so do lefties, right? They do that amongst themselves when they're with their own labels, but they also do that with other people, right? They will look at a group like the Proud Boys and call them Nazis, call them white nationalists. They'll look at Gavin McInnes, call him a Nazi, call these people racist and all these things. But if you watch the actual videos of the Proud Boys burning these signs from that church, there are plenty of black and brown people in that crowd wearing Proud Boys gear, flipping off the BLM symbols. Right, so there could be that there are other reasons, right? They associate with this group, right? It could be that maybe this group isn't a white nationalist group if they have all these black and brown members. I think they're actually led by a Hispanic guy or like a Cuban guy who looks very brown, right? So to say that they're white nationalists and they're Nazis and all these things is just fucking dishonest. I think you need to be very clear when you say these things what those words actually fucking mean.
I mean, is that
I don't think
Enrique? I think you're trying to say Enrique Terrio can't be a fascist.
Yeah,
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he's not a white nationalist.
Didn't they kick him out, and then the new leader said,
"No,
we're sorry for having that."
No, that was bullshit. No, hold on. That was bullshit. That was taken from a joke in the Telegram. Right? I'm actually in the Telegram because I used that to communicate with Gavin when I got the AMA set up. I checked the Telegram. It was one post. It was one post as a joke, and every other post after that is the rest of the Proud Boys in that group shitting on that joke and making fun of it. That joke was taken by a news organization and posted as actual news. There's some kind of battle within the Proud Boys. That's just total bullshit.
Yeah. So
I'm confused as to why.
Okay. So we're gonna try to move on. Riverboat, I'll let you have the last word on this piece.
Whatever this was.
Yeah, whatever that was.
So just to respond real quick to a couple things. Last username brought up a really good point about there's no way we can know the contents of somebody else's heart. I agree with that, which is why in order to discern someone's actual political intentions, the only valid way you can come to those is by observing what they have said and what they have actually done. And this is why you can say Donald Trump is a fascist, because he has wanted to do very fascist things. He's just been unable to do them, and lack of power does not make someone not a fascist. And on top of that, when we're talking about the Proud Boys and why are there black and brown people in the Proud Boys? And largely it's because there is this idea of they're the Southern Poverty Law Center, the group that compiles information on hate groups, has a large dossier on the Proud Boys, and it's because they describe themselves as Western chauvinists, that is a more accurate term for them rather than white nationalists. There are white nationalists in the Proud Boys, but there are also a lot of people who are taken in by the supremacy of Western civilization being the guiding light for a civilized world, and these people can come from all kinds of backgrounds that are not white or ethnographically white, and so it has a wider appeal in that sense. and because they hide behind the memeology of it, right? They can kind of pass off a lot of the white nationalism as jokes, or anti-Semitism as just jokes. And this is largely why they've been able to succeed as an organization, and perpetuate itself. Anyway, that's my piece.
Yeah. Okay. So, the last thing on that, and I want to like try to go back to the original topic just for a moment, anyway. See what happens there, because we have strayed a long way from that. But yeah, you don't, just because they have a few black and brown people, who I wouldn't happen to know any of those types, but yeah, just because the Proud Boys have a few black and brown people, doesn't mean they can't be fucking pro-white nationalists, right? And everything, right? And pretty much everything, but like their actual like membership, like you could just look at their actions, look at their words, right? And the rhetoric, like it. I think they've very much established themselves as, you know what, the fucking hate group. I'll say it. They're a fucking hate group, right? So I can't let that pass. They're a fucking hate group, and I won't have any other talk of that. Fucking hate group. Fuck them, and fuck the people who joined them. Anyway, moving on. Back to the vandalization, right? That was, oh, you're unmuted, Mix Vivian. But back to that vandalization. So a lot of you were hanging your hats on this whole private property thing. It's like, oh, they went on private property, and that's different from, on public property taking down another symbol. I don't hang my hat. I don't care about this public-private divide that everyone else seems to. But like, I want to get to the heart of the matter, right? The heart of the matter is there was a symbol, right? There's a symbol that they didn't like. These was it the Proud Boys, or was it whoever, MAGA supporters, whoever they are. They saw a symbol, they didn't like it, and so they took it down and they destroyed it, right? How is that different from BLM or whoever it was who this summer have been all tearing down statues? Symbol they didn't like, took it down as an act of speech. Many of us were defending the entire time, right? As this was going on as an act of speech, right? Now I'm being told that this is different. Is it just because it's on private part? Is that it? Go ahead. No, nothing.
Yeah, I couldn't care less. Well, I could care a bit, but the private property versus public isn't what really matters to me. It's what symbol you're pulling down. If you're pulling down a Nazi symbol or a Confederate symbol, then yeah, I support that, because those are evil, bad symbols. If you're pulling down a Black Lives Matter symbol, then I'm going to not defend that, especially if you're doing it in a black community at a black church.
It's not about
clearly saying that you don't belong here.
So it's not about defending. I'm not the person to be defending, especially if I just call the Proud Boys a hate group. I'm not going to be defending them, right? But the point is that look, comparing the actions and the meaning behind them, right? Like, if it's simply that they're taking down a message that they don't like, right? Versus what was done during the summer, while the statues being taken down, right? Like pulled down. Then what is the essential difference here?
I feel like I kind of answer that. Like, let's say, to make the example very clear, let's say it was a Martin Luther King Jr. statue, okay? If they were pulling that down during the summer, that's the same statue, the same public property statue. I would not defend that, because that you're tearing that down to show your hatred for black people. Versus when you tear down a Confederate statue, you're doing it to show like your solidarity with black people.
Oh, I mean,
if I understand you know nothing, you seem to be defending basically like it doesn't matter who owns the statue or what it is. All you care about is like the symbolism behind the action, and if it's symbolizing some idea you agree with, then it's okay.
Well, you belong in jail or whatever. You broke the law. You should get whatever comes to you. I'm just saying that I would support that action, morality-wise.
Okay.
Wait, so you would support
you want
the
them in
BLM
jail?
protests? Yeah. So would you support the BLM protesters who tore down like statues of, slave owners? Would you support them going to jail for doing that?
Yeah. I mean, if that's what the law is. I'm saying I think
really
we need laws to defend public and private property.
I appreciate your consistency.
But you want to break those laws.
We'll go to counter, then go to Wired. Go ahead, counter.
Well, yeah, some laws are Go.
No, nothing. I appreciate your intellectual consistency because, like, that's kind of the thing for me. It's like I would hope that we would have leaders who would basically preempt our need to, rip down racist statues. But I kind of have like two questions that I just want to pose to the group. Or one statement and then one question. So BLM, you have to understand how it's being pitched to the far right or being pitched to the right in general. BLM is being pitched as a racist movement. They are taking the BLM website and basically citing like the destruction of the nuclear family and, all this like pro-communist, stuff. So I'm not saying that like those people could have been individually shitty and just not like black people and knew that that was a black church and just decided to make an asshole move. But there's also some people who are going to support that because they literally think that BLM is like an anti-white movement. And this is actually the question that I want to ask because I think it flows into it really well. So what statues are we going to leave up? So it seems like most people in this room are relatively okay with taking down Confederate statues, taking down anything for that is 100% pro-slavery or people who fought on behalf of slavery. But then my question is, what do we do about controversial figures like Benjamin Franklin, who was anti-immigration? What do we do about Thomas Jefferson, who was a slave owner and spoke out against slavery, but also owned slaves and had like a slave mistress, and which you could just call rape at some point. So what do we do with these figures that seem to be integral to the American colonial story from like a European perspective? Who gets to stay up? Who gets to stay down? And how do you communicate that message and why? I think those are important questions.
So
sure, I actually agree with you. I think that's an important question. Yeah, no, you're fine. I actually do think that's an important question. The inevitable question of like what will happen to statues that say 100 years into the future suddenly become controversial or are seen more controversially, or at least we're more critical of as new information comes up, or as information that we knew about becomes more dubious as time goes on, is a very important one. I personally am against all statues, but I recognize that might not go for the entire room. So I'm just going to state my position right there. That's where I remain intellectually consistent. I don't think we should ever erect a statue for a person. Their ideas should be immortalized, sure, in textbooks, what have you. I don't see the purpose of the statue personally. However, I just want to say, just to go back
I'm down with that.
Yeah,
like,
just to go back
public
to
statues anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
The statue thing is
in museums. Okay.
the statue thing is irrelevant.
Finish your point, Guitar, please.
I just wanted to say, back to Prime's original point, I just wanted to say that like the difference between these two acts of vandalism in DC, which in this case I think amounted to charges of, at least the specific acts of vandalism, which were like 2 signs that got torn off and burned, probably amounts to no more than like a few months in jail. Whereas again, under Trump's executive order, vandalism of these statues that we're talking about, just as we've seen it happen this last year, could be charged with prison times or prison sentences of up to 10 years. So evidently the law is pretty clear about what the difference is on this particular issue. I personally think that if you vandalize one of these public statues, that it should probably be left to the states, probably far less than 10 years. But evidently Trump thinks otherwise. I'm curious to see, like, if you're, say, for instance, maybe a right-wing libertarian or a Doobie-esque figure in chat, I want you to kind of wrestle with the fact that, like, these acts of violence that were carried out, and they were very much acts of violence and terror, carried out in this historically black church, at least insofar as the vandalist acts themselves, will probably not be impunable for any longer than a few months in jail time. However, tearing down or even just vandalizing a Lincoln Memorial, for instance, can be punishable by up to 10 years. So I wonder if there's any cognitive dissonance there, if anybody that thinks that, oh my God, Lincoln Memorials don't ever touch them, 10 years in prison, like instantly. But attacking a relevant historically black church that has sermons every Sunday is, oh, that's fine. Just slap them on the wrist, a few months in jail.
Doobie, if you want to hit it, that's cool. But I also have a response.
I just real quick, I wanted
Sure, go ahead, Jack.
Interject to actually get to Prime's like restating of the topic real quick, and just that fundamentally there is little difference between the actual acts themselves in both these cases. In like the statues got destroyed, the signs got destroyed. They were done because a political side did not like what those things represented. And we can read all into that, but I just generally think that, much like No Nothing said, like in both cases, parties should be willing to get prosecuted for this and face the law, because that's what the law is for. But on that note, like it does matter, like the context of both these actions, and like the wider context happens to be in this case that like yeah, these people from represented in these statues represented like people who killed a whole lot of Americans, who killed in the name of subjugating tens of millions of people in this country. And I think that there is fundamentally a really big difference contextually to the two acts. So when it comes down to it, if we simplify all the terms, they're very, very similar, but the contexts are very different.
So I'll go. Yeah, I'll go to Doobie, then I'll see if Tiberius has anything to say. Doobie.
So I actually don't think people should see prison time for I mean, you can say vandalizing the church, but really they pull down a couple of signs and burn them, right? It's not, it's not like they did damage to the church itself. I'd be okay with a fine, maybe community service, but like prison time seems a little intense. I'd say the same about people vandalizing public statues, right? So long as they're not damaging the statue itself, if they put up some signs, maybe spray painted a bit, a fine and some community service seems fine to me. Now, I actually agree, just kind of harp on what Wire Guitar said. I think that the issue with putting up statues to people is that we have like a cultural morality shift, right? Our understanding of what's okay shifts over time. So in 50 years, things we think are great today, that we're celebrating people today doing, might be just like totally taboo, right? And you end up having to pull down more statues. So yeah, I generally agree with that point. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to punish these people too intensely. So if they didn't do actually like permanent damage to the building or to the statues themselves. And I think that like if we look at what BLM did, right, from that perspective, and again, I feel weird bit saying BLM because it wasn't the organization; it was protesters who maybe supported the movement. Right, but it wasn't the organization itself saying, "Hey, go out and pull down statues." So, but what these people did was, they were attacking symbols of oppression, right? Basically. But I think if you were to take a step back and try to look at this through the perspective of these Proud Boys or Trump supporters who were there, who were pulling down these signs and burning them, many of these people see BLM as like a racist, communism infused organization that is attacking the like ideal of like the American identity itself, right? Not the racial identity, right? But what it means to be an American, what it means to be patriotic, right? And that's why they disagree with this organization, not because they hate Black people, right? So from their perspective, they feel like they're being oppressed by this group, by supporters of this group who go out and try to fight them and try to get them fired for expressing themselves, for expressing pro-Trump opinions, call them Nazis and try to denigrate them anytime they speak up. And for a lot of these people, they BLM and Antifa are representative of like the oppressor, which is a silly position when you really think it through. But that's genuinely what they believe, right? So I think it's more similar than anything from the perspective of both sides.
Yeah, and what we should do is we should cater to people who believe in bizarre fucking conspiracy theories that manifest as like white supremacism. That's what we should do.
Or
Because,
maybe you should address their arguments so they no longer think that way.
After all, there are a significant
Amazing.
amount of people in those groups who think that by 2066 they're going to be a minority in their own countries. And why shouldn't they deserve some kind of like self-determination or autonomy to like break free from this oppressive regime that seeks to
Tiberius.
replace them ethnically?
Please.
Sure. When it comes to this whole conversation, granted, I do, forgive me, I'm very ignorant on it. I try to do my research, but I largely get for the next two topics is what I largely covered. That's more my specialty. As far as what happened, I can't say for sure, but by what I can tell, it's definitely Proud Boys, and I'm not exactly a fan of any kind of Proud Boys. The conversation that I was really hoping we were going to go down, and that was hinted at very much, was a counterbalance between ContraPoints and Vivian Wolf, which was that Antifa, that kind of thing, is being marketed to the right as a very extremist ideology, and it is empowering, or not empowering people. It is radicalizing people in the way that Vivian was saying, where we're having more people join the Proud Boys, where we're seeing the rise of neo-Nazis and neo-fascist movements across the board. I thought that was a wonderful conversation to have. I would like to explore that a little bit. How do we counteract that? We all seen Suspect Sushi. Just straight up went to the dark side. Like, how do we counteract people from embracing that? Because I've talked to him. He thinks he is rightfully justified in what he's doing. Like, he thinks he's the good guy. I'm like, dude, you've gone to the dark side. I'm trying to walk you back from this. Realize it's like, dude, you are literally the people you hate. So that's the conversation for me that I actually want to have here. But
and to actually address Tiberius, but also hopefully what Mix is saying is like you can't just so you're saying we should cater like that. That's actually a line that I get a lot whenever I try to articulate like right-wing views, is like, you're trying to cater, you're trying to coddle, you're trying to help these people out, you're trying to hold their hand and walk them down the street. No, I'm not trying to treat them like fucking children or trying to soothe their little butthurt egos or anything like that. I'm trying to come up with arguments that are compelling to them. I'm trying to come up with narratives that are compelling to them. I'm trying to convince them that we are not all members of a controlled opposition Jewish cabal to mind fuck them out of existence. So that, as stupid as that is to you, and as stupid as that is to a lot of people are captured by this ideology. So there is room for calling them idiots and making fun of them, because nobody likes to feel stupid and nobody likes to be made fun of. And maybe that's your role in society, and I wish you Godspeed in that role. But my role is to try to articulate their perspectives and then tell them why they're wrong. So that, I mean, like, you can attack it on multiple fronts.
I feel like there's a lot of lecturing being done here. If I seem kind of fucking frustrated, it's because you're kind of saying a lot of the shit that I say really fucking regularly. Yes, we do have to understand their positions and where they're coming from. Yes, we have to counter fascist propaganda by explaining why it's fucking bullshit, right? But like, the question was as to the morality, or like what should be done with the people who engage in activities on behalf of those violent ideologies. And at that point, it doesn't really matter too much like why they believe that like Antifa and BLM are like some dangerous fucking communist organization that's going to destroy the United States, right? What matters is that they engaged in an act of violence against a local church community, a black-run church. They caused people to fear for their safety. They acted, in support of and in accordance with pretty fucking fascist values, right? And so we have to counter that on its own terms as well. We can't just be like, well, they have some good reasons, or there are some good reasons why people get sucked into this. Of course there are. We know there are. You want to try and stop people from getting to that stage, but you still have to fucking deal with them once they're there as well. And you have to defend your community from those people who believe those things, regardless of why they believe them.
Completely agreed. And this actually gets to a point that I wanted to ask Wired a little bit. So in a liberal democratic society, so Know Nothing and a few other people have articulated that the moral difference in these scenarios is the fact that like the motivations behind them, the symbols that are being torn down, the history that's associated with them, all that kind of stuff is the context that makes one morally correct and makes one morally reprehensible. So let's just say we agree to those definitions for the sake of the conversation and for the sake of principle. So sure. That doesn't really necessarily work from a legal standpoint in a liberal democratic society. You have to have a rule, whether that rule is private or public property, or if it's a fascist or an authoritarian communist, or if it's an anarcho-communist, or if it's an anarcho-capitalist, weird MAGA fusion fascist gang running around beating the fuck out of people. There has to be rules about what constitutes violence, what's a criminal offense, what can you be arrested for? What can you be punished for? And you pointed out like the disparity in the rules. But what I was actually kind of finding interesting, you were looking for consistency from the right of like what violations are we looking for and what are we unwilling to accept? But I would kind of posit to you that we're not getting consistent definitions even in this conversation about violence, for instance. Like, so for instance, I think Mix would probably disagree with you that property damage specifically constitutes violence. And that's where we're operating in a world of like semantic difference where it's hard to know what's right and what's wrong because we don't even agree on what fucking definitions mean.
I would say
But I think that,
damage can constitute violence. Yeah. Sorry.
You would say property damage constitutes violence?
I would say
property damage can constitute violence. Yes.
Wired.
I would say that property damage constitutes vandalism, which is the legal definition of what we're operating on here, right? What happened in DC was vandalism and a few stabbings, which were assault with a deadly weapon. And we're talking about,
yeah. Sorry, carry on.
No, you're good. I was just going to say, though, that like that was the conversation that I was having, was that in one context, vandalism against a federal statue can be punishable by up to 10 years in prison. And in this context, the type of vandalism that occurred in D.C. probably approximates to the damages like no more than $180. So those guys can sit in prison, maybe actually probably jail for 3 months and then get off scot-free. I just think there's a huge double standard in the law right there. And that was what I was trying to define. I think it's pretty clearly labeled out in the law what Trump's executive order means for federal statues versus misdemeanor statutes in DC. I don't think there's any ambiguity there whatsoever. Moving forward to a more perfect world, like I guess what you were trying to talk about, like an idealized liberal society. Well, like I said, I in my ideal world wouldn't have statues erected towards really anybody. This kind of information is totally fine in a museum, totally fine in our textbooks. I'm totally fine with that. But in terms of erecting a statue to a certain historical figure, fuck it. Even MLK Jr., my biggest inspiration, I still wouldn't have a statue dedicated to no purpose for that.
So I this is a point I've been trying to get out for a little while now, is just that like a lot of people seem to be saying that it's the law, so if they commit vandalism they should expect to like suffer the punishments or whatever. But this is why we have judicial discretion. Like, we don't just have a law saying, oh, it is wrong to do this thing, and if you do this thing, you get, like, 10 years in prison or whatever, right? And that's what always fucking happens. No, because each case is different. Each case has, you know, certain nuances to it that mean that the crime is either more or less heinous, right? And in the case of like tearing down a public statue to racism, I would say that that is a much less heinous crime than, you know, being part of a gang that is like prowling the streets looking for people to beat up and destroying the property of a black community church. It's an entirely fucking different situation, and I would say that one should be dealt with more harshly than the other.
And what's interesting is one is being dealt more harshly than the other, but it's ironically the one where it's, again, Trump's executive order guarantees that the federal statute vandalism of any capacity is instantly punishable for up to 10 years. Whereas in DC, again, these people will probably serve no more than 3 months jail time. So there is a double standard. It's just not in the favor of what I think most people would logically agree is deserving. Even Doobie, I'm sure. Doobie did agree earlier in this podcast that it seems a little bit fuckety that people in DC will be serving like a little bit of jail time, whereas people that violate federal statute as designed by Trump's executive order. I don't know if I'm being too confusing when I say that. I'm just saying there's an executive order. I can't even remember the number, but I have the page right here of the whitehouse.gov that shows that the full extent of the law in 10 years of prison time is punishable for those that violate, that willfully injure federal property.
Now, is that like a minimum sentence, or is that like giving judges or prosecutors up to 10 years, right? They can hit them up to 10 years.
It says up to. I can link you the whitehouse.gov link right here, but it's
just either way, it's stupid, right? So
I agree with you. It's stupid. But yeah, it's to the full extent of the law, which authorizes a penalty of up to 10 years. So
we'll roll on to closing statements for this topic, and move on to the next topic. All right. Start with.
Can I go first?
Okay.
Yeah. Because I wouldn't mind asking a couple or mix a question that I hope she'd be willing to address in her closing statements. So basically, one of the things that you were saying that was on the cusp of being very interesting that I would like to hear from you is you were saying that property damage can be violence. So I would actually be really interested to hear like your definition to kind of separate what, you know, Twitter lefties or, random Antifa people have said, oh, well, property damage isn't violence. I would like to hear your like definitional difference just so I can understand it. And then just to address the hypocrisy specifically, Wired. So the reason why you haven't heard me like address your point is because I agree with you. And when people say, Trump isn't a fascist, he at the very least has fascist tendencies. So for instance, palingenetic ultra nationalism, basically meaning that there's a story, the past used to be better, we need to get back to it. The reason why we're not back to it is because we've lost our way. That's him protecting the statues of slave owners, is saying you can't attack the symbols of America no matter how nefarious, because it's our story, which I don't agree with. I think historically we need to have our eyes wide open, and we need to look at truth as it is.
Sure. Okay. And we'll give Viv a little bit to think about that if she wants to answer. Everyone, let's keep it short so that we can move on. I want to respect everyone's time, of course. Riverboat Jack.
For those of you who want more information about like the relationship between like the Proud Boys and like white supremacy and just kind of that strange relationship, I recommend reading Proud Boys and the White Ethno-State. It's a pretty good book. It's by a professor who has specialized in the history of eugenics and white supremacy. Good read. On top of that, I disagree with the notion that like we shouldn't build statues to people that we find admirable, because even if we find them objectionable in the future at some point, I'm perfectly fine with them being torn down if I'm like an old lady or like after I'm dead. I don't give a shit. If people want to take it into their hands to tear down these statues in the future because of changed like cultural perceptions, that's totally fine. I'm okay with that. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I fundamentally think that there is something different between rejecting a public notion that we should, like, as a people, have statues in public places that, hail, like, violent rebels to the Republic as heroes when they were fighting specifically for the right to own people as property based on the color of their skin. And I think that that is very different from an organization associated with white supremacy tearing down and defacing churches. I think that that is one of those is clearly better. It's not the ones done by the white supremacist adjacent group.
Thank you. No, nothing.
Oh, yeah, sure. Legally, I think that there should be laws against destroying public and private property. And I think if you violate those laws, no matter what property it is you're destroying, you should get the proper punishment, regardless of why you did it or your reasons for doing it. But I also think that in some cases it can be noble, and I could applaud you for doing it. And in other cases, I think it's ignoble and evil of you to do it. And just like on the Gavin McGinnis Proud Boys thing, like I don't know if like if Doobie's like friends with this guy or whatever, but I just found that very weird how defensive he is of Gavin McGinnis when the guy's like loves associating with Nazis and ironically being a Nazi as a joke.
Tiberius.
As far as destruction of property, we already have laws for this. As far as why you do it, we can get into semantics, but generally those who make up a more conservative ethical framework, which I definitely kind of come from, is that the action tends to dictate more than the reason for doing so. You should be punished accordingly for that. That's an ethical conversation, long conversation we have to get into. As far as me personally, I definitely am no fan of Confederates. I don't know why the hell they had statues to begin with, but we had this conversation months ago. Why are we still here? As far as what happened now, you blatantly just went up against people's free speech and on their property, which is kind of heinous and makes any kind of side that I'm associated with makes me look really, really bad. So I'm definitely not in favor of that. That's not how we're supposed to behave, especially in a civilized society. So screw these people, arrest them, and charge them. I'm going to end with that.
All right. Definitive. Manly. Very, very strong. Next. Guitar.
Yeah, I just, in general, am pretty in favor of, I guess, violence and, I guess, in this case, vandalism, as I think we've established everybody on this panel is, widely speaking. In this specific instance, it seems like a pretty no-brainer to just not side with the Proud Boys, because I think what they did was indefensible. But then in a larger context of just, in general, people vandalizing statues, even if said vandalism is done against war memorials that celebrate slave owners in the past, I think there can certainly be a context in which criticizing these individuals is appropriate. And then just in general, again, restating my first axiom or my first principle on this topic, I don't think we should ever erect statues to humans. I just think that in general, like if we're going to find symbolic ways to embellish them or to praise them, we can think of more creative ways to do it than to erect a statue, which makes, I think, that any country that a statue of a human exists in, like of a 10 or 15 times life-size statue, like in the Lincoln Memorial's case, it just kind of looks like an authoritarian dictatorship. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting strong North Korean vibes from my trip in DC. But anyways.
Counterpoint. Oh, actually, I already did that. Doobie.
Sure. So, yeah, I just kind of touch on what No Nothing said really quickly. I'm not Gavin's friend. Right, I think he's a smug hipster asshole. I don't think he's very funny. If I seem defensive when you guys label him a racist, ethno-nationalist, a fascist, and a Nazi, it's because I think words still mean things. And I don't like Nazis or ethno-nats or racists. And I think that when you do these things, when you throw around those words as loosely as you do, you give the actual racists and Nazis cover, because they can say, "Oh, these fucking communists, they just call everybody a Nazi." You know, they're going to call me a Nazi, but hey, I'm actually a libertarian. Hey, I'm actually, I'm a socialist, right? I think you give these people cover. I think you help them when you do that. So I think if you're going to throw those labels around, you need to be very precise when you do it, because as Jack said earlier, they do play word games. Now, regarding like the statues, I think that if no damage is done to the building itself, if no damage is done to the statues themselves, a fine and community service seems fine to me. I don't think jail for these people makes any sense, including the BLM supporters who, just spray painted a statue of some Confederate asshole. And yeah, I think that that's about it. I think, yeah, those are all the important bits.
Okay, Lester's name.
Yeah, so I try very, very hard when I'm criticizing or arguing with people who I disagree with, especially people who I radically disagree with, to listen to them very carefully and to represent what they're saying accurately. And that means taking what they say at face value. And if I criticize them, I'm criticizing the things they say, and I'm challenging their beliefs. I'm basing it on, okay, you said this, and how does using what they say rather than avoiding the very, very large temptation to just say, I know what you really think, I know what you really are, blah, blah, blah. If I'm going to do that, I got to have a very good reason for doing that. And I have to take it from the words they say. And the reason I do that is because as soon as you misrepresent someone, they just tune you out completely. They're like, okay, this person is not interested in listening to me. We're not even having a discussion here. And it just any kind of discussion breaks down so easily. And that's all that really matters here. If you want to be able to live with people without violence, you need to be able to communicate with them in some sort of good faith way. And that's what I try to do. And I think if you want other people to listen to you and take you seriously, and not just the people you're arguing with, but third parties listening, you have to make that same effort too, as tempting as it is to just speculate about what's going on, but crypto this and crypto that. It's not a good way to persuade anybody of what of the point you're trying to make.
Okay. Thank you for that. And Blaster's name, your camera is a little jittery. If you could pop out and pop back in. Sure. Thank you. And finally, Mr. Vinimov.
So I think I categorically reject the idea that that at least I was categorizing Gavin McInnes in a sort of throwaway, like, he's just a neo-Nazi kind of way. I very specifically said that I think he's a fascist who is very, very comfortable, or what was it? Very comfortable hanging around with, or very sympathetic towards actual neo-Nazis. And I think you can see this very easily in the organization that he's set up, which does have a far-right neo-Nazi fucking fringe to it, and also it's set up predicated on a sort of hyper-nationalist view of Western society, and going back to like a bygone era, it's all about purity and the veneration of the Western man. There's a whole load more I could say on that, but I don't want to fucking go on forever. But I think that I can very much substantiate the claim that Gavin McInnes is a fascist. With regards to the violence again, the property damage being violence thing, we'd have to look at the definition of violence. To me, violence is that which infringes upon the autonomy or the ability to live well, basically, of another person. And if you go and burn somebody's house down, for example, that is a form of violence. You're inflicting suffering on them. You're removing their ability to have shelter, somewhere to fucking sleep. Right? This is eventually going to cause them to suffer and cause them damage. I would call that kind of property damage violent. That is not to say, though, that violence is always bad. Violence is a tool, and violence and any tool can be used for good or ill, but violence will or pretty much always create suffering, because that's basically the definition that I'm using for it. Did I miss anything else? Statues versus signs and shit. I don't know. I think I elucidated my point pretty strongly. It's not just about them tearing down these individual signs. This was one act in a campaign of violence meant to terrorize their political opponents, and that's something that we should be thinking about a lot more strongly as these groups grow bolder and, in fact, more desperate during the Biden presidency.
Okay, thanks for that. That was an interesting topic that went places that I didn't expect it to go. But that's the magic of these panels. We can have these interesting moments. But thank you all for being here quickly. Hey, if you haven't followed me yet, please give me a follow. We have these conversations all the time. We also have walk-on panels where audience members like you may join. So if anything interests you, please give me a follow. Also, if you're not currently subbed, please consider subbing to the channel or gifting subs and donations. We have the PayPal button below. If you scroll down on the screen, there's a PayPal button. Please take use of that to keep this content coming at you 6 days a week. Thanks so much. Oh, and if you have, of course, a Prime, Amazon Prime, please consider that using on this channel to help us out. Thank you so much.
Any primers in chat?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah. We have. What do you say?
It's just a play on words of what Freems always used to say, because your name's PrimeCayes, so it's even funnier. I don't know. I'm a child. Okay. Any primers in chat? That's like any Amazon. Never mind. Fuck it.
If you weren't using that, you should be.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being around. All right. So, topic 2. A common argument used against taxing the rich is that they will flee and you will lose them from the tax base anyway. Is this a valid argument? Or is the U.S. uniquely positioned as the world's economic center to keep us wealthy despite whatever taxes we may levy? And the rich, if the rich do intend to flee, should we punish them with a high penalty tax? That's my favorite part, is the punishment, because I like punishing success. I'm that kind of a dirty socialist. Anyway, we'll start with Revolt Jack. She also likes punishing success, right?
I do.
Don't like anyone better than us.
First off, the argument that the rich are going to migrate is not backed up by any kind of historical precedents. Most of the data that we have indicates that actually the rich tend to migrate less than lower classes of the population, than the middle and the working class. And then on top of that, moving your entire family to another fucking country is a big, deal. It's a lot of emotional investment. And most of the rich don't bother with this because it doesn't actually meaningfully impact their style of living to be taxed more. So, I don't think that it's a boogeyman that is brought out all the time that doesn't actually have a ton of validity to it. And the validity it does have is widely just supported by anecdotal data, not actual numbers. On top of that, sure, we can pass a high, if you're a billionaire, you want to move to a different country to avoid paying taxes, okay, but it comes with a cost. You're a billionaire, you can presumably pay that cost. I'm fine with that as well. So there we go.
All right, fair enough. Thank you very much, Jack. Go ahead, know nothing. If you're talking, you're muted.
I can't hear him.
Can he hear us?
I hope so. Hold on. Maybe not. Let's take a look.
I don't.
Maybe-
He can probably hear us because he's not talking. Yeah.
No, nothing. Is he in chat? Oh no, he wasn't in chat. Hey, no, nothing. Can you hear us now? If you're talking, we cannot hear you. No, nothing.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Yeah, are you muted on your hardware?
Maybe it switched to a different mic.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. We'll get back to you. I know nothing. Maybe work on that for a little bit. We will get back to you. Tiberius.
Sure. Will the rich leave? The answer is simply no. Yeah, there is some anecdotal evidence. We're with this. We saw that with New York going to Florida. This one dude who kind of screwed the New York budget over, but that's actually not the norm. When it comes to this, it's a simple opportunistic conversation. The United States is the world seat, the world hegemon of economic power and prosperity. For people to want to leave, they're going to have to change. Just for the rich, it's the most reliable financial institution out there. Why would you go anywhere else? I mean, just look at your other options. You have Britain, which oh God, who's feeding back?
No, nothing. Can we? Can you talk? Try now. No, nothing. Maybe not. Okay. All right.
Anyway.
Keep moving.
Yeah, I'll finish up real quick. Anyway, who's the options here? Britain? Well, because of Brexit, they've lost a lot of their financial institution, or not financial standing, and no-build Brexit's making that so much worse as it goes. The EU? Well, they've been in around half the states have been in recession since 2008. They don't have a standing either. Japan been in recession in and out since 1990, and China is a totalitarian police state. They're not going to leave. What? They might go to Canada, but it's Canada. They're going to stay here. Sorry. Yeah, the right's wrong on this one. They're just lying through their teeth on this particular anecdote.
Interesting. Okay.
You hear me now?
Yeah, right. Yes, we can.
Yay.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I don't have much more to say because Tiberius wrote Jack nailed it. I mean, like, if there was evidence that people were migrating due to or incremental increases in taxes, then I would say, yeah, we shouldn't do it to the extent that it would actually lower the revenue the government brings in. But as it looks right now, we should continue seeking to maximize the revenue and keeping those taxes high.
Okay, sorry. I know this isn't. Okay, no, I'll ask you during the general. All right. Next, Mixed Vivian Wolf.
Well, I think we had much higher taxes, like 30, 40 years ago, right? And that didn't seem to cause too many fucking issues. But what do I know? I'm just a lefty, so my knowledge of economics isn't that great. I'd say that it's more a moral fucking responsibility that we should seek to, because there's no billionaires, there's no really fucking wealthy ass people that have managed to get there without exploiting other people in order to do so. They've taken money away from hardworking people, and that money ought to be taken back, regardless of the consequences, like economically on a broader fucking scale.
Jesus.
Okay. Next. Counterpoints.
Oof. So I'm interested in the statistical evidence that Tiberius and Riverboat Jack are allegedly aware of, and it's not because I necessarily disagree. It's just because I haven't fucking seen it. So
I can post some studies in chat if you'd like.
And I'll be very happy to review them. There actually is like a mathematical equation. I forget what it's called. I'm sure somebody smarter than me can re-enlighten us. But I'm sorry. Yes, where basically like there's a certain amount that you can tax at which point you do start losing productivity, and I would be interested if this is like actually like something that's set, like where you just set that bar and you leave it, or if it's something that needs to be adjusted over time. Because what keeps happening with like Democrats and Republicans is we keep like shifting the taxes up 5%, down 5%, sideways 2%. We invent all these new rules for tax breaks and all that kind of bullshit. So I'm really wondering how much of that is like political posturing and how much of that is trying to chase this curve of efficiency. And then also we're talking about like, we're talking about the United States as a whole, but we're also talking about states, because there are people who make economic decisions based off of state level tax rates. And I would be interested if the evidence that people are saying they have also applies to the states, because it does seem like there are a lot of Californians who are considering moving due to high cost of living and high taxes. And I love California, but even that's part of the reason why I don't live there, is because it's fucking expensive as shit. So I'm interested to be rebutted.
Okay. We'll go to Wired.
Yes. So I guess I might have baited you a little bit when I said the Laffer curve, because I knew that was what you were referring to. But unfortunately, I think the Laffer curve has been debunked since Reagan tried to implement it under like Milton Friedman economics back in the 70s. I don't think any economist really takes it serious. Yeah, I don't think any economist really takes it seriously anymore. I am totally in favor of taxing the rich more, especially in times of economic crisis such as what we are in right now. We've seen probably the biggest recession since 2008. I think this is bigger than 2008. At least by most economic metrics that I've checked recently. Of course, we've rebounded, but that rebound has been mostly in the lining the coffers of the top 1%, while families are literally, or I guess literally dying of like, very basic reasons or like, very basic things that we could be dealing with by just upping state revenue a little bit by implementing a taxation, or at least rolling back Trump era tax cuts. So I'm definitely in favor of raising taxes on the rich. And I do think, I mean, unfortunately, again, like Riverboat, Tiberius, and Know Nothing also pointed out that both of them pointed this out correctly, that there's just really nothing more to say. Like the rich do not flee. There's no place to flee. Where are they going to go? Where else could they gain nearly as much revenue as they can here in the United States with this mostly service-based economy, where the consumer pool is just so wide and actually like has enough money to spend on their goods? They're not going to leave. They've got the money to pay for it. You should raise tax on the rich. Sorry, you've done it.
Never apologize for wanting to soak the rich now on this channel. Next, we go to last username. Last username. Tell us why success is bad.
Okay, so there's no question that if you tax people enough, they will eventually leave the country. If you tax 100%, people will leave or do something, something bad. The question is, how much can you tax them? What is the slope of that curve? How at what rate will they start to leave if you tax them at what rate or whatever? So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I guess more to the point is, how much more tax revenue do you think you can raise by taxing the richest people in society? Without going into details, if you look at the numbers, it just comes out to not very much. Any sort of significant increase in tax revenue, I mean, if we're talking about America here, probably has to come from the middle class, maybe sort of upper middle class. But taxing, there's just not a lot of money to be gotten from taxing the super rich, the billionaires or higher. Consider also that the billionaires themselves don't necessarily have to leave in order to cause problems. Their money just has to leave. There's this thing called capital flight, which tends to happen. One of the things that can cause it is too high taxes. There's lots of examples of that in America, in other countries. Go look it up if you want to know. Also, we're witnessing right now a shift in the nature of work that I think is going to have a massive result in a massive shift towards more competition between governments to keep productive people. Remote work is getting really popular, and now that because of this pandemic, it's getting super popular and it's exploding in popularity. And being able to work remotely removes one of the major forces that keeps people locked to a particular country, right? If you can work in a different country than you live, it's much, much easier to move out of your country. And that's going to increase the pressure on governments to compete for productive people. And one of the ways they're going to do that is by keeping their tax rates reasonable. So, if you want to tax the rich, I mean, show me the numbers that show me how much revenue you can raise by doing this. And and show me how it's going to make any significant difference relative to the amount of damage that you would do.
Okay. And Doobie.
I'm a little confused. So is the position of Tiberius and feel free to answer this, Tiberius and Riverboat Jack, that capital flight doesn't happen at all? Like it's just not real? Or are you saying that in the United States it doesn't happen because there's nowhere better to go?
I didn't tag capital flight.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't tag capital flight. I tagged whether the rich would move, which I'm going to discuss when it gets more to an open panel, because there's a massive difference between capital flight and the rich.
So you're talking about like individuals, like rich individuals, like people. Oh, okay, I see.
That's what I understood as the pertaining of this particular conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then I feel like maybe I think other people mentioned capital flight too. I don't think that I'm the only one confused about this end, because are we speaking specifically about rich people moving to another country, like individuals, or companies moving to other countries that are more competitive, that have better tax laws?
I think competitive. I'm only speaking for myself, but capital flight seems like the more meaty thing.
It is.
Yeah. So I mean, capital flight definitely does happen, right? If a country becomes less competitive, if there are other countries that have better tax laws, the companies move, right? They move their headquarters and they do business elsewhere. Now, if the next question is, should companies be penalized for doing this? Maybe. I'm trying to imagine how that would look, right? If we would just raise taxes on a specific company because they decided to move somewhere more competitive, that seems really iffy to set up. I'm not really sure how that will look in practice.
Okay. General panel. I was going to ask another thing, something. I'll get back to whatever it was. Another thing, would you say previously in your statement, I should have written down, just like quick over, like of the intro?
Who?
I mean, I just pretty much agreed with Riverboat Jack and Tiberius that capital flight isn't the major problem with incremental tax increases that we've seen.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. Who said anything but like incremental, right? Like, what do you consider incremental tax increase?
I don't know,
What about
like raising a few percentage points or whatever that is generally done. Like New Jersey had a millionaire's tax, which was an extra 2% on millionaires. Stuff like that has not been shown to have any real effect on flight.
New York is also drafting a bill right now, similar, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, so that's where I was really curious, because I mean, like, so for instance, like, I think a shitload of tech companies have set up in Ireland for their EU business, because Ireland has like extremely low taxes, and it's actually a huge debate in the country over whether or not they should bother to raise taxes, because if they do, then they might find another haven. So it's a question of like almost this like predatory relationship where, you know, like how we basically set up the sweetest deal in the EU. How do we get ourselves out of it so we can actually financially benefit from all these companies being here, besides them coming and shopping at our things? Also, oftentimes, like a lot of socialists and lefties, they will talk specifically about capital flight, villainizing the jet setter class of their countries, who have said, you know, oh, well, they nationalized my business, they're stealing all my resources, fuck these motherfuckers, I'm out. And they cannibalize their businesses and leave countries without a lot of technical experience. I'm specifically thinking of Venezuela while I'm talking about this. So that's kind of where, if we're talking about like little sweet love taps on the taxes, or the rich paying their fair share, I'm sure Riverboat Jack and Tiberius have statistical analyses of that. But isn't like all of the globalist capitalist argument about a shitload of countries taking our businesses because it's more competitive economically? What am I missing?
You want to take this, Jack, or you want me to?
I think you can take it. You haven't talked a whole lot during this panel.
Yeah, sure. This is definitely more my wheelhouse. So I might split the field here. When it comes to people moving, that was where I thought the conversation was going to pertain to. People largely don't move. We definitely see that. Like, people are talking about how people are leaving California. It turns out it's not the rich. It's actually the middle class and the poor, because they can't afford that shit anymore. But that's a whole other conversation. When it comes to capital flight, we definitely see that move. That's where we see corporate headquarters move from place to place. We used to see that South Dakota had more corporations registered in South Dakota than any other state at one point because it was a tax haven. Now I believe it's Delaware, but you might not quote me on that one. Capital flight will move. Your European Union definitely you guys nailed that with tech companies, is that Ireland has that same issue. Companies will move. Now there's ways that you can get around that. There's ways where you can have basically your sales tax, your VAT taxes that are predominant to your locality. A great example of this is your internet sales tax that largely applies to whatever locality in which you are in. Long story short, will people move? Yes. Is there a lot of ways that you can stop that or make it invalidate it? Yeah, you can. So there's all of that. I can get in the laugher curve too. There's I can literally just manhandle this conversation by myself for an hour. There is one thing that I will address later with how taxes versus capitalism work, because it actually serves the exact same fucking function, and people don't understand that.
Okay.
So if you won't, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just saying, like, I'm more curious than anything else. So you might hear me ask some questions. So for instance, like, that's where oftentimes I know Mix was kind of saying that there's like there's a moral wrong here, and she doesn't care about the kind of the impacts. But for me, it's like if there's a utilitarian calculus that like makes people infinitely fucking more miserable by trying to switch to like a more moral system, and everything gets fucked up in the process, then I would like to try to thread the needle. So that's kind of like how do you thread the needle? How do you attract companies? How do you make sure corporations pay towards your society? Because frankly, it doesn't seem like they're interested in paying towards societies. It seems like they're just interested in taking as much fucking money as they can, taking advantage of any tax havens they can, and kind of not giving a shit about their employees or the societies that their employees come from.
Well, yeah. I mean,
just on a... Go ahead.
I'm like, yeah, corporations exist to do one thing and one thing only, and that's to make money. If they can do that by getting around tax laws, then they're going to do it. And that's not going to change whether or not the United States has high taxes on the rich or not. Now, I find it very dubious at best to say that, like, the United States will ever have low enough taxes to compete with someplace that is specifically set up to be more of a tax haven, such as Ireland. Like, one of the reasons Ireland is very popular for big tech is because Ireland has those low taxes. But I don't think that there is a point at which we could drop our taxes where they would move back. So I feel like chasing after this specter of like, oh no, they're going to move away is largely misguided. And I think that there are other solutions to capital flight than like just having low tax rates. We could, for example, invest in the IRS. We could do that. It's probably not going to happen.
Invest in the IRS.
But yeah, the IRS is criminally underfunded, which is why they don't typically audit the rich. So this is one of those things where like there are a lot of other things we could do to like prevent companies from putting their money into these tax havens in the first place, and have a better grasp on where their money is.
Well, what do you say to?
So what do you think?
Sorry, go ahead, bud.
So just to be clear, so you're saying that you believe that investing in the IRS, making it more likely that they're going to audit wealthy people and businesses, would make these businesses and wealthy people want to stay in the country?
Yeah.
Make it less likely?
I mean,
How?
I think that they would be more accountable to the government. Like right now, a lot of them are subverting the laws and regulations in order to do this capital flight, in order to move their money around in illegal ways. And one of the reasons given by the IRS currently about why they don't typically audit these people to get, U.S. taxpayer money is because they don't have the resources to do so. So instead, they spend their time auditing people like you and me.
I've got a completely different prescription here personally. Granted, I'm more of the economically conservative type, but at least for me is that if you are concerned about taxes and how corporations are going to try to kite around it, I say use the taxes that are most effective to invalidating whatever concerns they can use with moving, and that is largely your sales taxes. or you can use it as a VAT or a VAT tax. Is that is largely predominant to the locality of what you have, is that is done at the point of sale. It is not done like an income tax. And let's just be honest, in my opinion, the IRS is absolute dog shit, and relying on income taxes is just going to give you a world of hurt. Sales tax is a far better way to go. You can pretty much invalidate the whole Cayman Islands tax haven, because it's not about where they're registering their tax, it's where they're actually doing business, and sales tax is really, really good at doing that. So I just say skip the income problem, just go straight after the sales. Whether you want to go about that or what we want to set in, that's going to be more like that ethical argument. And obviously, like, there's a massive divide on the right and the left of where that goes. If we want to get into that, we can. But yeah, I'm just more of the case that if you're concerned about taxes going otherwhere or taxes getting out, just go with something that works, and that's just sales tax. Sorry.
Yeah, Tiberius, can I hit you with like the moral argument really quick? Because this is actually like one of the things that kind of fucks with me personally. So realistically, I think that like global capitalism may be net positive. I understand that might be controversial in these circles, but at the same time, it's like the poor do the dirty work. You know, whether that's food industry, you know, slaughtering animals, whether that's military, you know, adventurism and destroying countries and trying to build them back half-assed, or law enforcement or firefighting or EMTs or doctors or anything like that. So largely the dirty work of the world is done by the working class. So, you know, basically the progressive tax system is saying, like, we have created this society for you, the ultra rich, who basically get to, you know, do cocaine their entire lives if they want to, and bang as many whores as they want and have as many mistresses as they want. So you're going to be taxed at 33% because you are paying for society to continue to maintain itself in such a way in which you disproportionately profit. And that's something that I can't really wrap my head around with a VAT tax. Like, why the fuck, like, if rich people are just, you know, buying yachts and doing cocaine and all that kind of shit, like, what's my incentive as a person who's like principally motivated to be like, yeah, I'll go die for the oil wars, I'll go be a cop or a firefighter? It's like, fuck these motherfuckers. Like you know, it doesn't feel like there's a really big buy-in from rich people, I guess, for the moral side. Not any more than anybody else, anyways.
True. The big difference between the right and the left I've seen on like the ethical standpoint is that the left tends to have a more pejorative of that they're more equality sensed. That if there is inherent inequalities in the system, then that is the fault of the system, not the people itself. The right tends to be on the more individual aspect where that's the chain. It's on you to affect your economic outcome, not just as one motherfucker of a conversation. What I can definitely get into is that if you feel like that as a poorer person or as a middle class person that the rich are soaking you, I'm probably going to agree with you. Whether you should do that or not, I'm largely in favor of progressive taxes, and I do think that there's certain things that the state can do to take those taxes and use that capital to invest in the society that makes it very, very good, particularly education and roads. And infrastructure. There's other things that I think that literally they just piss money away, particularly Social Security is a wonderful example of this, but that gets into a whole other conversation. Yeah, the world's complicated.
Does a particularly great job with the whole education meme.
Our public
you got a lot of really respected schools, right? You got the Ivy League system, which actually I believe is largely fucking bullshit, but
our public schools are generally
sure you have education that is easily accessible by everybody, brings everybody up to a decent standard. That doesn't seem to be something that you actually have. Seems to be that the education, just as much as everything else that Counterpoints was saying earlier, seems to benefit like the rich and the already well off, and you know, everybody else has to like pay for it with the sweat off their backs.
On a level, I definitely will probably agree with that. And out of the education systems that are out there, our public education system, that's K through 12, and our system is largely seen somewhere in the rank 20s. We usually get beat by most of the Eurozone. As far as our university system, which is far more of a private system, we're seen as the world class. We have more people come here. Now, granted, this might be a scaling issue, but we beat the European Union in total outright as far as people coming here to learn. So whether that's a good thing or not, we can go down that, but there is definitely a massive discrepancy between the public system that we have and the private system that we have.
I wouldn't necessarily say having a number of people come there to study is indicative of quality education either. There's a whole
would.
bunch of other factors that could go into that. I know that's a huge conversation. I don't want to.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I guess one of the fundamental questions we should be asking is like, what is the purpose of our tax system, right? Is the purpose of our tax system to like make the United States better? Because if so, then I think higher taxes on the rich are definitely something we should advocate for, because that they have like a bigger benefit on society. And right now, proportionately, the rich pay less in taxes. In like state, federal, local taxes, they pay far less than the working class does. So
What do you mean by that?
I mean that they pay
Yeah.
less.
No.
Less? No.
I mean
More effective tax rate.
proportionately, they
You're
pay
getting-
less.
Well, can I articulate this, because I think it's actually really important. So proportionally, like if the money doesn't hurt them as much, because I understand that, but basically like and this doesn't do capitalists any favors, by the way. I think I want to say it's like the top 1% is like responsible for like 40% of like total tax income or something like that. In like if you go for like top 10%, it's even more than that. Where basically the rich people are paying a large, like the majority of the tax receipts. The reason why I would push back on Tiberius, and like here's where my socialist sympathies come in, it's like that's because capitalists literally think that any negotiated relationship is ethical. And I don't think that's true. So for instance, if you and me sign a contract, you're employing me for $5 an hour, I can barely fucking survive, but you are pocketing all of the fucking money and the profits from the business, then that's ethical under capitalism, because fuck me, I signed the contract, right? But at the same time, capitalists can negotiate any contracts that they feel like, any contracts that they want, as long as they can get away with it. And that's kind of where you see this, this wealth disparity of people just fucking shooting to the top. Now, I know not all of that wealth is liquid, so I'm not trying to straw man. But at the same time, like, I don't know, man, there's only 40 to 60 hours in a week. The people who are making 500K, they're not working harder than people who are working 60 hours in shit jobs. So this ethical capitalism thing where you just make 500K because you work harder.
But then why isn't
like
everyone
bullshit.
making 500K? If
Well, it's not about working
hard.
harder. I think these people are working smarter, right? They make better
smarter.
decisions.
What are they doing?
Which led to them,
What are they doing?
I
that
mean,
makes them so rich?
it depends on the. I mean, I can take myself, right? I make 6 figures. I work effectively about. Yeah, get fucked. I work effectively about 3-4 hours a day, right? And it's mostly paperwork, emails, some Zoom meetings, right, with my staff. Yeah, I'm not working as hard as someone working in a warehouse, picking up boxes, breaking their back all day. That's true. I'm making more money because I've made better decisions in my life. I ended up in a position where I don't need to work as hard to make more money. Right. So if you're gonna say, oh well, they're not breaking their back, they're not getting fucking carpal tunnel or whatever. So so they don't deserve that money.
What are
That's
you
just
gonna do?
ridiculous.
What are you gonna do when everybody works as smart as you, Doobie?
I hope they do.
What are you gonna do when everybody works as smart as you and there's nobody there
in
to
the streets?
No,
fucking
unfortunately.
clean the toilets?
No, unfortunately, I don't
So
think
it's not
that'll happen. But I do, like, just to be clear, I'm not against raising taxes on the rich myself, though I'm not like mega rich, right? I think that it does make sense if you're a wealthy person to be okay with paying more in taxes. That's a reasonable amount if it benefits your community, your country, right? If we're better off, if more people are better educated, then yeah, we should be willing to pay more in taxes so that people can go to college for free. If it makes more sense to have people have the peace of mind, that if they get sick, they're not going to go bankrupt, then yeah, it makes we should probably be okay with paying more taxes so people can get universal health care. Like, these things make sense. The only thing that I'm really concerned about when it comes to I guess this topic is if you are not reasonable, right, and because you're attempting to, you've got this ethical thing that you're concerned about and equality and all this nonsense. You go too far, and you end up hurting yourself because people just leave the country, they leave the state. We see this happening. I think it's happening in California. California is not very competitive right now for a lot of people, so they leave. They go somewhere else. The state loses out on that tax money. This happens at the nationwide scale too. I think France saw this one. So go ahead.
I just wanted to cut in real quick. You're going back from the capital flight argument to the individual rich men like leaving countries and shit argument, leaving the country and that
was my next point. So this happens at the individual level, but it also happens.
No, it doesn't.
It's more important when it does happen.
It doesn't happen. No, it does not.
Wait, what do you mean?
It happens in anecdotes. In anecdotes that live in your mind, it happens. This happens at a rate of like 2.4% amongst millionaires, and even of those 2.4%, 85% of the people that are traveling interstate do it at a net tax like negative. Like it does not in any way, shape, or not negative. Sorry, a net tax like equalizer, like it does not affect tax revenue at all. There's only of that 2.4% that move interstate to take tax advantage, or that move interstate. Most of these people are doing it for their jobs, for their family, etc. Right?
Okay, so
like
I'm
15% of that 2.4.
Okay,
what are you
so let me clarify that. So when you guys are talking about, these people aren't working hard enough, capitalists only believe that all contracts are ethical, all these things. Are you speaking of individuals, or are you speaking of companies and that are doing these things?
Okay, so I don't have like a utility, and sorry for jumping in, Riverboat, but I think this was my point. Basically, like this is kind of my point. Like, so you're saying that you worked smarter. I think there's a lot of smart motherfuckers in this room right now. So like it's a weird moral argument, but why is your labor worth six figures? Is it exclusively because it's supervision? Is it exclusively because of how high up you are? Is it because you have like a technical certificate? What is the like? And for me, there's not like a moral argument. Like, so maybe you're making 100K and that doesn't rub my ass wrong at all. But if you're making like 500K, million, 10 million, 20 million, at what point is your labor like actually worth what you're contributing to the company? And is it not some just like bullshit fucking contract that you wrote for yourself?
So I think your labor is worth as much as you can convince people it's worth.
Yeah, that's capitalist realism.
So if I can convince people, right? If I convince people that me pushing a button, right, is worth $500,000 a year, then hey, that's what my labor's worth.
Yeah, I hate that argument.
That's what it is. I don't know.
What better measure of value is there? I mean, if you make something and someone's willing to pay X amount of money for it, then I guess it's worth X amount of money.
Okay, so I think you should be taxed at 40%.
Here's what we'll do. We'll go to Jack, and then we'll go to Vivian Wolf, and then we'll go to Tiberius.
So, I mean, just real quick to give a citation for what I said earlier that got a lot of looks in from my fellow panelists. Read The Triumph of Injustice, How the Rich Dodge Taxes and How to Make Them Pay. Basically, it was an overview of like the taxation from like the 1960s until today, and it found essentially that in 2018, the top richest 400 families in the country paid 23%. Versus the 24.2% paid by the bottom 50% of American households. So just to give a little citation there.
Although if you go a little bit lower than the top 400, you find that rate goes up.
I still find that particularly heinous, right? We're talking about the 400 wealthiest families in the country. They can afford to pay more than the working class.
Wait, they're paying more than the working class. They're paying,
Right. They can afford to pay a larger percentage of their income.
According to who? According to you?
Well, according to like the value of what they might be willing to pay in this country. People are only willing to pay for however much they're willing to pay, right? You just made that argument for your own labor.
Yeah.
So
why
not?
And how much extra tax revenue can you get?
I mean, that's a great question.
But that's the question I raised earlier, right? So at what point do you raise taxes to the level where it becomes detrimental to these people to the point they like want to leave the country, or more importantly, they take their businesses out of the country, which we have seen happen.
It's a great question. Let's find out. Let's raise it up until we find out where that line is.
Let's raise it up until they all fuck off. And
that's horrifying.
And then we can start our own fucking cooperative businesses, and those businesses will be willing to put money back.
This is how people end up eating their pets.
because they'll
This
be
is great memes, but this is terrible.
Let's
Well, I mean, you can laugh at it, but like the point is, right now, we're stuck in this horrible fucking situation, right, in which people are like living in perpetual poverty, breaking their fucking backs, 40, 50, 60-hour work weeks in Amazon warehouses, so that fucking Jeff Bezos can be the richest fucking man and the first trillionaire. This shit is fucking disgusting. People are literally dying on the fucking street because they don't have medical insurance because they're afraid to go to the hospital. Like this.
Why
this
is
shit
Jeff Bezos responsible for
this
that,
shit
though?
can't fucking continue. And if your answer is, well, this is just the best that we can do because like trying to change it in any significant way is going to cause some hardship to people, then I gotta say to you, I think you're fucking selling people really, really fucking short. Like it's just it's not.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say two phrases: capital gains tax and luxury goods tax. We should all look into those and try to I feel like Tiberius is the only person that said anything remotely based in this entire panel, guys. Let's focus on taxing the rich effectively, which involve capital gains and luxury goods. We need to stop with this like LARPing of like, oh, they make too much money. I agree. Millionaires, billionaires especially, should not exist within society. But the ways by which we do that isn't just like, I don't know, like arbitrarily applying a wealth tax to their net assets. Like it's not feasible to like. And again,
why is it not feasible?
Because their net assets are all in their houses. Like these people have like actual. Are you trying to like take away their house or something, or like take away like
the effective tax rate in the United States on the wealthiest people in this country used to be like 56% in like 60 years ago. It used to be much higher than it is now. So let's just use the methods that we use to lower it to reverse that.
Or we could just target the ways by which they're generating all this wealth. Like just so we're clear, I'm like an anarcho-communist or syndicalist or whatever. Like I'm right there with you guys with the idea of abolishing the rich. I'm just saying the ways by which I hear it being suggested here by fellow, I guess, lefties on this panel is a little bit heartbreaking to me, just to see we're kind of like overlooking all of what we know about economics to sort of, I don't know, work a little bit.
So, but it's more fun.
Kind of accused me of knowing shit about economics.
I appreciate it because I could rapid fire this. Number one, Doobie, thank you for taking a glorious right wing principle and running it through the fucking ground. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Anyway, there's so many things I can go through here. As far as the whole ethical point of like wealth inequality and disparity, I do side with the right here. This does not offend me, and I know that offends the left and that you guys hate inequality and all that shit. I don't care. I'm definitely on the side that you sign for the wage, you get it.
People die because they don't have what they need. That's a real moral position there, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Let me split the difference here. Can I split the difference real quick, Tiberius? I swear to God, I'll let you go. So for instance, like if rich people got taxed the fuck out of, but then people had their basic needs met, like healthcare, are you opposed to that, or is it just specifically villainizing the rich that you're opposed to? And I'm asking Tiberius.
There's definitely a level of villainizing the rich that's just far beyond the pale that I can't get with. But
would you be opposed to like universal health care or meeting the material conditions of the poor, as Mix is accusing you of?
Oh, okay. As far as my own personal policies, I actually am in favor of a healthcare voucher system. I like capitalism. I want to do it through a private system. I don't know exactly who does the healthcare voucher system itself, but I want private healthcare, but I want the government to help be the intermediary to pay for it, or either we completely overhaul this fucking ridiculous insurance kit system that we do because it's a legalized monopoly, and of course it sucks for everybody. I think that's the primary genesis of why health insurance is absolute disaster. It's literally a legalized monopoly in each state. Of course it sucks. Of course it's terrible. Duh. Literally made the worst system of socialism, capitalism, and you mixed it the fuck together. As far as where we're going, I'm for paying for education just writ large through government means. It's through school vouchers or whatever, and through largely healthcare vouchers. I think that largely would take it out. Actually, the most effective one looks like housing of some sort, but that goes into social safety nets and seeing which ones are effective. Morally, go ahead.
I was just curious as to like which part of what I said did you disagree with?
Oh, okay, yeah. We'll do the work of efficiency argument. Is that the argument here is that the way to present this is that you are rewarded not for the smartness of your work, it's for the efficiency of your work. And I'll give a really quick anecdotal example. Somebody can come to my house and say, hey, look, I'm going to mow your yard, but I want to charge $20 for it. I'm like, nah, it's more in my interest to do so. So they're out, and I kept my value. So they can't do anything. Now, $10, I might be an even split. $5, I'll definitely have you do it. I'll pay you $5, but they might be like, hey, fuck you, dude. That's not worth it in my interest. Here's the difference between that $5 work. If you're doing it with a push mower, it's not worth it. It's absolutely not within your interest to do it. But if you do it with a zero turn and you're done with it in 3 minutes, of course you're going to take that $5. Of course it is economically advantageous for you to do this. And that's the difference here, is that it is not how hard you work, it is how efficiently and utilitarian you do in your work. And if you're some unskilled laborer that, commands no wage because you have no skills, of course you're poor. Now, I'm not going to demonize you for being that way. I want to educate you to get you up the value-added chain so you can have a more prosperous life. But if you're in this situation and you're wondering why you're poor, I don't have a lot of sympathy for you. And if that makes me an evil, dirty righty, then fine, but that's where I stand.
Okay, so let me ask this question because I think it's important.
Not
What if people are not capable of it? And like I literally mean that because so for instance, like I'm probably gonna be okay in whatever economy comes down the chain because I have skills that will meet that economy. But there are lots of people who don't have those skills, and it seems like the jobs that those people are capable of doing are disappearing by the day. So what happens if you're just the person who's not capable of working in this remote, high tech, high knowledge, high skill, high fucking bar of entry economy? Are you just fucked? Because you suck?
Great question. I love this question because this conversation rapidly splits into two general viewpoints really quick. Is that so far, every time we've had one of these industrial revolutions, and we're moving into industrial revolution number 4 now, is that we see an entire sector of industry get wiped out. This time it's going to be service industry. We're going to move into what is called quantitary economics. We're not exactly sure what that is yet, but it looks like shit like Twitch streamers and making homemade movies that cost $300,000 to make, that you guys have probably seen some of these pop out on YouTube in the more recent years. That looks like it's going to be whatever the hell's coming down the line. That's the genesis of what it's starting at. And so far, every time we've had one of these industrial revolutions, we've had jobs to replace what we've lost. So there should, at least in theory, be some kind of job that you can work your way into and have some kind of skill that you can work your way into. If that isn't the case, let's just assume that we go full robo-communism here. You basically need a new ism, is that the robots do everything and that we never need labor. Every mean and ism that we have for explaining the world just goes out the rails. You will have like UBI doesn't even work at that point because money is meaningless at that point.
Right.
We don't even have a clue how to handle that. And
wouldn't it make more sense to, rather than just saying, hey, maybe something else will come down the road and, everybody can be like Twitch streamers and YouTubers. Wouldn't it make sense to support like job training programs and to fund those programs so that people who are stuck, in maybe they're laborers and they don't really have the skills to get into really competitive techie market, we can fund job training through the state and help them get on their feet somewhere else. Like, I don't really.
No, I don't disagree that this is a bad policy. The problem is there's nowhere near enough jobs. This just goes into the whole industrial revolutions thing that I was talking about just a minute ago. The second industrial revolution wiped out 90% of agriculture. The third industrial revolution wiped out 90% of industrial jobs. And now the fourth industrial revolution is going to wipe out 90% of service jobs. Whatever is the past will go away.
And I'm just asking this really because robots require electricity, lithium, all that kind of stuff. How is that going to replace a bartender or a server? You know what I'm saying? Like that's where I'm not seeing this arachno bartender robot taking over a human being. It's entirely possible, and maybe that'll be like a niche thing. But do we have enough lithium? Do we have enough steel to replace every bartender and server inside America? That seems weird as fuck to me.
Do we phone operators and clerks? Like a bartender? Sure. I mean, bartenders are maybe a little bit too interesting to be robotized instantly, but there's a lot of very sort of simple service jobs that people would rather just do with robots, right? Supermarket cashiers, they're going away pretty soon. So
I hate that.
I get it.
I fucking hate it.
Let me hit you with this, is that what you are asking in a level is is looking at the world in 1970 and say, what is the year 2000 going to look like? That's kind of the level thing that we're looking at. What is the world of 2050 going to look like? Because when this revolution goes full pace, do I expect robot bartenders? Yes. Do I think there will be a few human bartenders still left? Probably, but they'll largely be there on a charisma based level. But most people who will be in stores that do your checkouts, they might have one or two for the older folks or for the people who hate the machines, but the machines will do 99% of that work across the board. You might even have it where you just put it up on your kiosk and you go, I want this, 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 and this, and it literally just ships it to you and you just walk out of the store. That's the world we may very well be moving into.
I think if you want to get a good sense of what work of tomorrow is going to look like when there's lots of robots, is look at what kind of new jobs do these robots create? Like, sure, a lot of these jobs, being bartenders might go away, but it's also a lot cheaper to run a bar. Maybe we'll have more bars, or maybe we'll have more things that previously took, giant labor forces to do. And so very few people could do them. And now you can do them with a couple of robots. So, everyone can be, a manufacturer. Like, you can manufacture things in your home on your 3D printer and sell them that previously took like this huge industry to manufacture. That's the kind of thing you want to look at. Like, how is the technology, what jobs is that technology going to create? And that's where you want to aim, right?
So to tie this all back into the original kind of question here, like, in that kind of a future where we have companies that are now being run mostly by robots with lower labor costs, on cheaper products that can be produced at scale in, for even less money now. We're looking at like companies that are going to be leading to the richest people we've ever seen on like a scale we can't even possibly imagine. So this becomes like even more of a pressing question.
But it's the opposite. Like, previously when all work had to be done by people, it was only giant companies that could do that because it had to be such a large scale. Now you can manufacture with not a single employee. You can just have some machine in your house that anyone can afford. You're going to have much smaller businesses. There's going to be many businesses that can be much smaller.
Doesn't that hand the world to the creative Uber race?
Well, no, I mean,
that's what you got to be. That's what we got to be.
But you still have the problem of like production of scale. Like, a large company is going to be able to produce those robots.
It's less of a problem,
even cheaper.
Production scales down more.
But
because there are diseconomies of scale as well.
But it also scales up more. Like, they get more efficient. They can operate on and accumulate far more wealth. This is what happened when like Ford
pretty
created
sure in most
lines.
industries a shift from human labor to robot labor is going to shift things towards smaller. Like, it'll be cheaper to have bigger business, but it'll even more cheaper to have a smaller scale business.
Can I split the field here?
Okay, Grace, why don't you start with our closing statements, because we got to move on from this topic. So
no, that's not a problem. There's definitely a lot here, but I think we largely covered the like whether we should tackle the rich thing, and at least we levered our measurements. To close out the statement that we were hitting on with last is that with the rise of automation is that there's definitely a propensity that the rich can very much get absolutely richer. If that is a concern for you, be very aware of that, because it's largely going to it's going to cause stratification on a level, because that means that there's the inefficiencies that make your wages means that if you don't have that, if you have cheaper goods but you have no wage, then you're just shit out of luck. And so I actually think the left used to be right on that point, but then they went all and said, hey, immigration's good, and they completely went off the rails for me. There's so many goddamn ways I can go about this. I'm so sorry. Closing statement, automation is definitely something that scares the living crap out of me. The question will be, what is the skill set of the next generation of jobs, that fourth generation of industrial jobs, whatever we call them? If you are mid-skilled to do it, where you have to have some kind of business acumen or you have to know something of what you're doing, you will probably be able to make some kind of substantial living off of that. However, if it's not...
Like, what do you think of this, what I said about automation? Seems like it's going to help small scale businesses and workers much more than it's going to help large scale businesses.
We're closing. Sorry.
Yeah. But you can respond to that. I'll let you have another moment to respond to him, and then we'll move on.
The simple one for me is that usually in an economy of scale is that while you can get empowered, we've seen this with 3D printing on the low end level, more often than not, it starts low end level and then it rapidly ramps up into something that's a lot more higher. And the economy of scale is with robots is that you'll have this massive gigafactory that builds half the washing machines in the whole damn country, and it'll be shipped out from your point of nexus, and that will be the norm. Is that usually with economy of scale is that consolidating it into a general area where you keep the supply line short and simple and sweet and just distribute from there through efficient modes of locomotion tends to be the way that this world works. And if that's the case, automation is actually going to hurt a lot more people than it's going to help.
Thank you. All right, Jack. Everyone, let's keep it short so we can move on to the next one.
I think that like a lot of what has been said here just seems to indicate to me we need to tax the rich. I don't care by how we do these means. I think that it's necessary for us to have a world that's worth living in for the vast majority of people. Yeah, if we can do it by the means Wired Guitar was talking about, if we can do it by the means Tiberius was talking about, I don't fucking care. Tax the rich, and make this world a bit more equitable so we can all participate in society more, have more freedom. There you go.
Based.
Okay, Vivian Wolf.
I mean, Riverboat Jack just said it. Fundamentally, all these things only work the way that they do because we agree that they work the way that they do. Money's a social construct, blah, 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 blah. If we decide that we want to stop funneling huge amounts of money into the hands of very few individuals, then we can, if we set that as our axiom, as our goal, as our target, then, much smarter people than me who know a lot more about economics than I do can surely find better ways to do it. But I don't think that they want to do it, and that's the problem.
Wired.
Yeah, I've been mostly quiet. I understand. I don't think any of you were upset about that, though. Just because I think I agree with a lot of what Tiberius has said. The biggest thing I take issue with, hopefully maybe we can talk about this sometime in the future, is immigration's a bad thing. But yeah, for the most part, capital gains tax, luxury good tax, and also immigration is a good thing. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Tax the rich, though. As in the immortalized words of Mayor Bill de Blasio, tax the hell, tax the hell out of them. I'm just kidding, but not really. So.
Okay, Hollywood. Sorry, did I say Hollywood? No, I meant I say fucking Hollywood.
Okay.
I think counterpoints. I think when I think of counterpoints, I think glamorous. What was I looking at? This thing Hollywood. I don't know what.
Damn, I'm into it. Hey, I'm into it. Maybe I need to change my name. So, yeah. So my sincere fear is because I'm really sympathetic to a lot of left wing arguments along principled lines, but I'm also not trying to destroy society in order to enforce that principle. So, for instance, if somebody is as rich if they're richer than fucking Jeff Bezos or whoever that fucking Malian king who fucked up the gold reserve, Mansa Musa, whatever the fuck his name was, if they're that rich, but everybody has healthcare, everybody has a good education, everybody has a good life, they can provide for themselves. I don't give a fuck. Be as rich as you fucking want to be. So I don't want principle to distract from utilitarian human well-being. And what's terrifying about this conversation is I just learned that we're all going to be fucking YouTubers in 30 years. And that scares the fuck out of me because there's already so much bad content out there. But I'm super worried about automation. And just to throw out a counterpoint before I cede the floor. Last username, I actually am really sympathetic to your argument because there are a whole bunch of internet businesses that did not exist a decade ago. T-shirt companies that I shop from, razor companies that I shop from, basically small businesses that outsourced the material requirements but made incredibly simple and elegant products, bought into somebody else's supply chain, branded it, or didn't even brand it. This is called True Classic Tee. There's no logos on here. It's a fucking great t-shirt. And those people are small businesses who are somehow capitalizing on the on this weird fucking information revolution that we all find ourselves in. So I'm horrified. And that's my closing statement.
Okay. Uh, let's go to last Tuesday.
Okay, so I think what Tiberius was saying before is really important. There is no economic philosophy that explains how you can have a society in which most people are non-productive, in which some tiny amount of productive people support the entire society. No, not capitalism, not Marxism, like nothing we know of it makes that work. We must find a way to have a productive middle class, one way or another, no matter what we do. With no amount of taxing this or UBI that is going to avoid that. Even if it could, people would be miserable if they couldn't be productive. I mean, and productive just means creating value for people. Now, I say we are facing a golden age of productivity for the individual. Automation clearly gives a huge advantage to small scale operations. Things that previously required a workforce, which means you need all this overhead. You need, an HR department, benefits, and blah, blah, like there's a ton of overhead costs as soon as you hire your first employee, and it makes having, manual labor an economy of scale. With automation, that gets much, much smaller. And yeah, you may not be able to compete making like really straightforward stuff, right? You're not going to be like a small scale maker of like, steel girders or something. That's going to be a big scale operation. But there's zillions and zillions of little boutique products that you can make. You can just invent them yourself, right? Like non-competitive, non-commodity stuff. I have this drinking fountain that my cats use, and it's made by some guy in his garage. And it's an awesome little product, totally one of a kind. And it's a tiny, tiny little operation, little things like that, or Twitch streams, or nice things on Etsy, like anything you can imagine. And there's so many more of those things that are made possible by automation. That's what we need to look at. It's like, in a way, this is like a leftist's dream. It's like no one will have bosses anymore. Everyone will own their own means of production. There'll be no more exploitation through employment because everyone will be self-employed. Like it's a leftist dream come true. It should be anyway, but I don't know. What do you think, leftists? Are you excited? I am.
Being me.
Very much so. Okay, so let's go. No, nothing.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think tax the rich. They're not leaving. With the automation stuff, automation is definitely a good thing. The only question is, can our system handle it? And I think at a certain point, depending on how far we get in automation, I don't think capitalism will be able to be a system that we can have. But I think that's fine. Like if you're only getting replaced by a robot, if that robot is doing the job more efficiently than you, which means society is creating more value without you in that case, you can move on to do something else, or you should still be able to get the fruits of the labor that society is producing with automation instead of human labor now. So if eventually we have like half the population out of jobs because of automation, we'll be producing more than we're producing now. So as long as we tax or get to socialism or whatever we want to do, everybody will be doing fine.
All right, Doobie.
Rich people good, poor people bad.
All right. Can't be any more obvious than that. All right, so let's move on to our final topic. All right. Scrolling. All right, so topic 3. The U.S. has a global military empire. With bases around the world, the U.S. can project power nearly anywhere. Does the American empire serve a beneficial function? Would we be better off without it? Does the price of U.S. military intervention, which includes civilian deaths and refugees, is it worth what we gain? Is there a more beneficial global power dynamic possible in the short or long term? I wrote this weird. Anyway, credit to Counterpoints for inspiring this topic. And Counterpoints, buddy, as always, I thank you for helping me out with that. All right. Anyway, we'll start with Riverboat.
All right. So I guess I'll break it down by each point. Does the American empire serve a beneficial function? The answer is yes, with the major caveat. That caveat being that it's beneficial to the United States, not necessarily to anyone else in the on the face of the earth. When it comes to would we be better off without it, depends on who we is. If we is people in other countries, then mostly no. Or mostly yes, they would be better off without the American Empire. But again, would America be better off without the American Empire? Probably not. Does the price of U.S. military intervention, which includes civilian deaths and refugees, is that worth what we gain? Most people in the United States do not give a single fuck about foreign deaths, and this is maybe a hot take, but like most people here like don't care that like hundreds of thousands of civilians died in Iraq. Most people here don't care about the civilian deaths in Afghanistan. Most people don't give us like two shits about like the over the CIA overthrows of democratically elected governments in South America and Latin America. And is it worth what we gain in those instances? I mean, again, when the cost is something that most people in the United States don't give a shit about, maybe. And is there a more beneficial global power dynamic possible in the short or long term? Yes, we could do either better imperialism 2.0, in which, we use economic means to better other countries and in order to set the foundations for better diplomatic relations in the future, a la, what China has done in Africa for the most part. Or option C is get rid of our imperialist tendencies and tend to our own garden, as it were. I think that there is... I think that the future would be better off without imperialism, without foreign wars, without our projecting our military might across the world. We can invest more at home instead of spending, 13 times what our competitors do, or whatever number it is now. There's a whole lot of beneficial things we could be doing with that money at home that would actually benefit American lives in a tangible way. That is not being done right now. And just to make it clear, I don't want any of this to be me being pro-imperialism. I think largely imperialism and colonialism have been some of the greatest crimes inflicted upon humanity across the world. By some estimates, the British Empire alone inflicted 1.8 billion deaths in India over the course of its colonization. So, yeah, imperialism and colonialism is bad, and just because it benefits us doesn't mean it is good. So, that is my stance.
Tigers.
Ooh, all right. So I'm definitely gonna have some contention points, which is gonna get fun. All right. So there's a weird part about the American Empire I have to get off my chest, and that is that it seems to be that the American Empire is even more bipolar than I am. When it comes to countries that are near the equator, they're largely treated with a doctrine of kill it with fire. And we do all kinds of horrid shit. And I don't know why is that we treat these people differently than we treat the other folks, but that's definitely the case. When it comes to countries that are more in the temperate zone, such as Europe, Eastern Asia, and Oceania, is completely the 180 on this. Is that it's the most benevolent empire we've ever seen. We didn't come in after World War II and annex all these countries and tell them what to do and tax the living shit out of them. We actively opened up our market and our global trade network to them. We literally bribed up an alliance to fight the Soviets. And it's proven to be the most economically advantageous and politically advantageous economic system and political system and military system on the face of the earth ever. So what's to be gained here? As far as percentage of GDP, military spending is at record lows, especially compared to the 20th century. Having all the imperial powers all on the same side, playing by the same rules because Daddy USA is imposing that on them, is an absolute win. We're not fighting a war every generation on multiple continents, keeping each other's resources in check. America just plays boss. I think this is an absolute win. Now, can the United States personally, with a more isolationist stance, walk back and reinvest in itself in a more advantageous level? Yes, but I am a firm believer that pull that off for the Europeans, they go to war next Tuesday.
Okay, all right. There's a response in there. Okay. Nick's Vivian Wolf.
Yeah, no, I think that's fucking ridiculous, honestly. I don't think that Europe's about to go to war any fucking time soon. Most of the large wars fought in the 20th century were fought due to like an imbalance of powers, basically. Right now, we've got like, you know, the EU and other sort of transnational organizations and alliances and stuff that would absolutely hold up, even in the absence of US hegemony, which I'm sure we'll find out pretty fucking soon as China rises to prominence, you know. And America arguably has already become the second economic power in the world.
Take it back.
What? I'm just hey, I'm not an economist. I'm just repeating what economists have said. Okay. With regards to like our effect, your effects, America's effects overseas. No, of course the fucking civilian deaths and all of that aren't remotely worth it, and the infringement upon other nations' national sovereignty, the interruption in their democratically elected governments, coups and the like. No, none of that's acceptable morally. As Riverboat Jack said, like perhaps it has made things better for American citizens to a degree, as it has helped America to maintain its status as a world hegemon. But I think that any right-thinking person should be fighting against it with all their being. America like does not have any kind of like claim to I don't even know, like moral superiority to be able to like run around and do whatever the fuck it wants to do and boss around other countries and mess with their governments and so on. I don't know. I kind of lost myself halfway through that, but yeah, I was just astounded by Tiberius's assertion that Europe would be at war without the US hegemon. I think that's incredibly. I don't know.
Okay.
Like,
Sorry, we gotta move on. We gotta move it. Go ahead, Wyatt.
Yeah, I guess my thoughts on American imperialism are quite simple. I guess trigger warning here real quick. I do like brown people and black people, and it seems to be the case that American imperialism has been responsible for probably more brown and black people death than any other country's imperialism that I've ever seen. So I don't know. I guess sacrificing the American empire so that Russia or China could take the reins, assuming they haven't already in a way that's much more covert, especially like the ways that they're exercising power in Xinjiang right now. And I guess us seemingly powerless to stop them, or I guess inept to stopping them, has me a little bit scared that maybe a new empire has arisen from the shadows that we don't even really identify. I guess specifically in the form of China, as Vivian Wolf has already pointed out. But yeah, it's hard to say, because if it wasn't us, it would be another country like Russia or China that would probably be doing, or currently is doing, equally as bad things to countries near the equator. And like I said, I like brown and black people, so I'm not a huge fan of what we're doing.
Okay.
That's kind of my thoughts.
Thank you. Counterpoints.
So this is really interesting to me, and we can tangent super fucking hard really fast. As the CEO of Antifa, Joseph R. Biden said, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And this is something that as a boomer millennial, I was still raised in the age in which I was literally born as the USSR collapsed. So I think it's really easy for Zoomers and younger millennials to just ignore the historical context of American empire of the 20th century. I think it's really easy for them to forget World War II, World War I, the reasons why we got sucked into Europe in the first place. I think it's really easy for them to ignore the history of authoritarian communist regimes and their interventionist efforts throughout the world, that the world was once and still is a battleground for resources between authoritarian societies and liberal democratic societies. And liberal democratic societies do heinous shit to maintain their power in the world. So that's not to excuse the heinous shit. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and reject one of the things that Riverboat Jack said, that basically we are only capable of looking in our own self-interest. South Korea exists because of American intervention. Kuwait is a free nation because of American intervention. Europe could have 70 years ago, which I know seems like a very long time ago to everybody, but I grew up with people who fought in World War II. Both of my grandfathers fought in World War II. So Europe did get the shit kicked out of it by a bunch of authoritarians, and now has some authoritarians who are rising up inside their governments. And it's a question of whether or not Russia would want to reconsolidate the Iron Curtain in absence of American empire. And it's also a question of whether or not Western Europeans would give a shit if Russia reconsolidated the Iron Curtain and turned everything into this oligarchical, corporate, mafia-style government. So while I am not a fan of drone striking civilians or torture or anything like that, I think there's a really interesting discussion to be had between the alternatives. And that's the thing about power, is power abhors a vacuum. And so I hate to, somebody said it, it's either us or it's somebody else.
Thank you. Great. Last question.
Yeah, I mean, I eagerly await the day when nation states are an archaic political system of the past and geopolitics no longer exists. I think a day may come someday, but it's not the world we live in now. What we live in now is where we have large nation states that fight for power. And is there a large nation state that I'd prefer to be in the position that America's in right now? Probably can't really think of one. So yeah, like I don't think, I'm not big on nation states, even if they're liberal democracies, but I'm kind of glad that America is in the position it is, as opposed to, China or the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany or any, other worse possibilities. So yeah, there you go.
Okay. No, nothing.
Yeah, I actually kind of have the opposite position of Riverboat Jack, where I think it would be a lot better for the citizens in America if we didn't spend so much money overseas and on our military, and if we spent it on our own citizens to provide healthcare, education, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like we aren't getting the bang for the buck that we spend on the military. My big worry really is that I am worried about the power vacuum that other people are talking about if we were to withdraw, and who would take that spot and whether it would be worse for everybody else, which I'm really just not sure either way on. So for now, I would just want to withdraw because I'm positive that it would help us, and I'm not sure it might help everybody else too as well, or it might not. I'm not sure.
You're a little low. Your audio is a little low. I know nothing. So just keep that in mind. Next, Doobie.
So I agree with in Counterpoints, Tiberius, and the last username. But I do think that the average American citizen is better off because America is the global hegemon currently, anyway. I do think that the blood spilled, the government's toppled, the democratic elections fiddled with and overturned. If that benefits the United States and its interests, then yeah, it is worth it. It's simple as that. Now, if we wanted to kind of pull back and look at how American hegemony benefits the rest of the world, I agree again with Counterpoints and Tiberius that compared to the alternatives, the world is probably better off, with the U.S. in charge than it would be with China or Russia. So that's about it.
So we'll go to open panel. I'll start it off with a question to Tiberius, or at least a comment to Tiberius. Sure. You said that things are better off because now the other imperial powers are on our side. We don't have to fight a war every generation to keep the balance in place or whatever, right? But I would counter with that you're literally constantly fighting imperialistic wars, right? Like to maintain our dominance, right, on the world stage, to make sure people do as we wish. We are literally constantly fighting wars. We are in our longest wars that surpass anything that we had fought previously. So I don't know, how this is a cheaper, more efficient state of affairs.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a good point, and I'm going to say that this is more of a point of context and not a point of direct rebuttal. Is that when we look at the wars of today, is that yes, there's a lot of civilian casualties, there's a lot of military expenditures thrown at it, but it's nothing compared to the wars of imperialism. Is that when we saw the Germans and the French and the British and everyone mobilized for global scale world wars, it was 50 million people dead in World War One and 70 million dead in World War Two, and literally entire economies destroyed outright. These brushfire wars that we have, as horrible as they are, and they are atrocities upon mankind, are pale in comparison. And the thing that I am terrified of is that if you let the American hegemon go away, that the European imperial powers have to come back because they're not playing by the same rules anymore. Is it bad? Yeah. Is it a lot better than what we've seen for the last 300 years? Oh my God. So that's the context here. And then just the other point was largely what caused the wars of colonialism and imperialism. It was all these nation states were looking to assert their geopolitical will upon the world, and they needed resources, they needed capital to make what they needed it to. So if you needed oil, you went off to the Middle East, or you went off to Indonesia. If you needed rubber, you went off to the same way. If you needed spice, you went off to India. This is what built that. But if you have free trade, if you have it all supported by one super state, everyone plays by the same rules, and we're not fighting each other constantly, consistently, generation after generation.
I would say, is it that everyone is outsourcing their violence to the U.S. then, right?
Yeah.
Rather than,
if you want to put it in that regard, on a level, you could say yes. And
I say yes.
Yeah, on a level, yeah, you can say that. Is that the U.S. basically just takes up the hammer and swings it for everyone. But the U.S. swinging the hammer for everyone has, at least in the consequences of scale, and if you want to be very utilitarian about this or whatever, is that it has a way lower body count and a way far more humanitarian effect on the general world as a whole, even with all the shit that we do.
I think you're comparing like two world wars to like random fucking skirmishes and shit. I don't think they're like. Well, I mean, I don't think that like a world war would necessarily break out if the US weren't in power. In fact, I think like quite often the US does things that are really fucking worrying. In regards to like possibly starting a new world war, and there's a good argument to be made. Once again, I would say that we're already in a new world war that's been ongoing for fucking ages, you know, like there's sort of like proxy wars in the Middle East and so on that have been going on and claiming like millions of lives over the course of the forever war. Like it's not like we just don't live in the same age anymore, so I don't think that you can compare these two very different kinds of warfare and international conflict and say, oh well, we haven't had world wars, so it's fine. Like I
get what you're saying. Let me rebuttal this real quick. I get what you're saying, and on a level, it makes sense. But I think this is a level of maybe affluency that we're arguing this from. Is that the context here? Is that my full assertion is that without the American hegemony, is that we go back to that. Now, I know that's a bit of a hard sell. We've had 70 years of peace throughout Western Europe, and we've brought the Eastern European family in to that family post-Cold War. And so it looks like, hey, what could possibly go wrong? We've got this wonderful community that is the European Union. We're all talking to each other. We have a relatively peaceful system. But people, I think, really don't appreciate the context and what that is built on. And that is American free trade and dependence upon the American military empire to protect that. And if that goes away...
I think it's that, like, all nations...
Cool.
Like,
how does Germany get its oil, then?
Oh, that's not what I'm objecting to. I think it's the reason we don't have fucking crazy ass world wars now is because so many nations have such a high degree of like military power that they can just literally wipe out like half another country with the press of a button. Like the wars between world powers they just wouldn't fucking go well for anybody involved. You can't just fucking blitzkrieg France and occupy it nowadays. It doesn't fucking work.
Well, that's the argument that they said before World War I. And the same argument largely applies with this as to nuclear weapons. Is that yes,
They
we have
didn't have they didn't even have like solid air bombing campaigns before World War One.
true,
Like I said,
but they
living in a very
had this
different-
weird thing called a machine gun and toxic gas like chlorine gas and all these other things that we would largely consider the first generation of WNDs. We have consistently walked up the level of ways to kill people, and it has never stopped us from going to war.
And Mix, this is where like you and I probably largely agree on a whole bunch of things, but then it's a question of like utilitarian evaluation of whether or not you think that thing is good or that thing is a net good or something like that. So for instance, just to say like, oh well, conventional wars don't really happen anymore. Well, in 1973, there was a conventional war, like an 8-way conventional war between a whole bunch of Arab nations and the state of Israel, and Israel kicked the shit out of those Arab nations largely through conventional means, but they did so. A war of that scale is nearly incomprehensible in the modern era because there is an expectation that any war between two nations will be met by a global response. The only reason why the Iraq war or the war in Afghanistan even went off is because the only person who was involved in that was the hegemon themselves, and not a neighbor. If a neighbor was involved, you would expect proxy wars to kick off and nearly everybody to be involved, and for there to be humanitarian outreach, and therefore to be like peacekeepers on the ground and all that kind of shit. So that's kind of where, and also even within these wars. So we talk about the global war on terror a lot as a worldwide evil, which I agree with. But there's also there's a missing context. So oftentimes when I hear leftists talk about the global war on terror, they talk about how we've been bombing the shit out of people, how we've been carpet bombing the fuck out of people, we've been torturing people, all that kind of stuff. Some of that's true. But what's also true is that we're working with local forces. So we're propping up, whether or not you think they're corrupt or not is kind of irrelevant. The Afghani national government, the Iraqi national government, who are taking on the role of their own security in their own economy, in their own governance. Now, of course, that's all within the American empire, but it's not just Americans unilaterally deciding to glass Iraq or glass Afghanistan. It's them working with local forces to fight a smaller faction. And that's a degree of nuance that I want to just introduce without any kind of agenda.
Can I just introduce the idea that maybe a lot of U.S. foreign interference is breeding more and more of these smaller scale conflicts? Because again, when we look at Latin America, U.S. interference has largely bred a whole host of terrorist groups and revolutionary factions and infighting. When we look at how the U.S. propped up the Mujahideen and how those turned into the Taliban, and then that came back to haunt us in the largest act of terrorism our country had seen. And then how that then sparked off the Forever War that has cost us trillions of dollars. Is this a symptom of how worthwhile our system is when a comparatively small act of terror can then kick off a $1 trillion war? Is that a sign of strength, or is it a weakness?
It's a pretext. Sorry, go ahead, Max.
Oh, no, I mean, you're going to say what I was going to say, right? It's not just that act of terror that, kicks off the Forever War.
It's a pretext. So we, I brought this up in previous panels. Donald Rumsfeld, before 9/11, I have the book. I think it's called by Henry Crumpton, The Art of Intelligence. He's an ex-CIA officer, and he was asking the CIA for evidence that Al-Qaeda was working with Iraq before the Iraq War. These projects are decades in the making. The reason why, it's always in the American mindset that Venezuela is a unique authoritarian evil that needs to be dismantled is because guess where the largest proven oil reserves in the world are? Venezuela. So the reason why we're always fixated with Iran being a theocratic authoritarian evil, even though we work with theocrats and authoritarians, is because they don't play our game. They're not a part of the global capitalist, hegemony They stick their nose at us. They give us the middle finger. So that's constantly fixated in the American mind. That way, if we assassinate a general and they bomb our bases and we have people nearby and it kicks off a shooting war, oops, now we just get to take out Iran. So it's kind of, this is all decades in the making.
I guess, but that seems to me like it doesn't actually, kind of to Know Nothing's point, doesn't actually benefit the American people in any tangible way. Did we as individual Americans see any benefit to getting the oil in Iraq? Or was that mostly something that padded out the bonuses of CEOs at ExxonMobil?
Yeah, it's not for you or me.
Exactly. So like to an extent, you can justify a lot of these imperial actions as like national security, but is it really that much national security when then it comes back around for trillions of dollars of taxpayer money that is meant to go to improve our standard of living, our lives here in America? I find this
the engine.
I find this very hard to justify when the alternative would be like just working with other democratically elected governments. Like we could have been doing that in Latin America for decades, but we overthrew them.
But what if they tell you to fuck off? I'll literally shut up after this point. What if they tell you to fuck off and they don't want to sell you the oil?
Then you fuck off and find oil somewhere else.
You benefit from us killing people and taking their oil. But we do. We all do.
Yeah.
Wait. I don't think we all benefit from that though. Like if they tell us to fuck off, that costs fucking off and like following through with that costs us a far lot less than $1 trillion. We can go find oil for far less from other countries.
I disagree, but I want to let other people talk.
Okay, so I think it's an interesting conversation, though, and something that I might want to get back to, actually. So let's go to Wired. Let's go to Tiberius. Last username, did you want to say anything at all? I just wanted to check in with you. Okay, that's fine. But so we'll start with Wired and last username and go from there.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I just wanted to say, I wonder if we're giving a little bit too much credit to American imperialism and not enough credit to MAD, or the acquiescence of like nuclear arms in a lot of these major superpower countries since the 40s, since the 50s, where, prior to it, we didn't really see, well, I guess we did in the case of Japan at the end of the war, but prior to that, we didn't really see nuclear arms being in possession of any major country. And so maybe, again, we're giving too much credit to the current American hegemonic superpower or imperialist capitalist nation, if whatever you want to learn about. But we're giving a little bit too much credit maybe to America and not enough credit to the threat that nuclear arms present to a global scale war, and how the wars that have been fought since we have acquired nuclear arms, since 5, and if we're being real, probably 6, 7, 8 or so countries actually probably have nuclear arms. What threat that presents to those superpowers, and how they've been circumnavigating that issue by fighting proxy wars in the Middle East. So yeah, that's my point.
I agree with you completely, by the way, but my only counterpoint just being the fact that like we're talking about like two separate things here. Preventing and freezing large scale conflicts because it's bad for everyone. I agree with you that nukes probably serve a very large role in that. But if you're talking about enforcing American material interests globally, you are talking about a lot of these small proxy wars.
So I got two things. The first part is in regards to MAD, and this is largely the conversation I was kind of having with Vivian earlier, is that when it comes to the new weapons that we have, is that largely these kinds of arguments have been had before. I've made the example of World War I with like machine guns and chlorine gas, and then going into World War II with tanks and airplanes and strategic bombers and all this other shit. Is that we keep upping the ante, and it seems not to be able to stop us. Now, has MAD changed the game? So far, no two nuclear armed nations have gone to war. However, I don't think that's the main point here. I'm actually going to use a leftist talking point. I am going to say that it is the prosperity encouraged by the economic partnership it brought by the American empire that has made us complacent and does not make us go to war. But in the event that that goes away, that's a whole different game. And we will use nuclear weapons. And the country that I'm scared of most right now is South Korea, actually acquiring a nuclear weapon and using it because they'd have to.
Using it against who?
The Norks, Japan, China, anyone in the region they don't like.
Do you think South Korea would do that?
Absolutely. If they thought it was a national security issue, they have.
Like what national security issue did? I don't I didn't see Japan posing a national security threat to South Korea.
We are talking about the country that basically turned the Korean Peninsula into a sex whorehouse for 40 years.
Sure, yeah, under like fascist imperialist Japan. Like,
And have you seen Shinzo Abe recently? Which I think he just stepped down recently. I could be wrong. Is that Japan is going far more right, and they're going far more armed. They're actively building aircraft carriers again. They're actively remilitarizing, and it's technically illegal for them to do. It's written in their constitution. They're not supposed to do
you
this.
say illegal. It's like they have spent the last 80. So,
They spent the better part of the last 60 years as an American protectorate.
Occupation.
Yeah.
You have
And now
US there with US soldiers raping local women and getting away with it and shit. It's no wonder that they would want to have some degree of fucking autonomy. It's
True.
like
Okay, let's building up your own military is not like oh, we're gonna suddenly start bombing everybody. These are two very, very separate issues. Sure, but let's throw this within the context of East Asian politics, which is largely that Japan has not apologized for anything that they did in World War II. Basically, people accuse them of like mass rape, mass slaughter, experiments, dropping planes of bubonic plague on cities. The rape of Nanking alone is like one of the most horrific historical events that the Chinese have not forgotten. And
let me know when the fucking US apologizes for dropping the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
I have so many bad things to say. Fuck them.
Oh, we did.
Now, technically, we were at war. But even at that point, even if we're going to say that it wasn't justified, like, didn't Barack Obama literally go for a wreath-laying ceremony with Shinzo Abe during his administration? Like, I mean, I don't know what you need to do to apologize for such an act. I don't know if you actually can.
Well, exactly, right? Like, I don't know what you're expecting of Japan with like the fucking rape of Nanking and shit. Former prime ministers and so on have like admitted that it happened, said that it was fucking terrible. Like, what?
Okay, they're better than the Turks. Yay! There's still anytime that they have a diplomatic conversation with South Korea. South Korea at least says, "Hey, could you throw us reparations, or could you do any of this?" And Japan actively tells them to fuck off.
They also
the idea of like reparations and shit is very contentious.
They also went to go visit that shrine. Shinzo Abe also went to visit that shrine, that war shrine, that many people find offensive in China and Korea. It's a shrine to the fallen, frankly, war criminals of Japan.
New York,
so we went there to antagonize them. I'm just putting that out there. I'm not drawing conclusions.
No, you're right. Shinzo Abe is right wing. He's a nationalist. He's definitely someone who's like worth worrying about to a degree, but I don't think that they're about to fucking nuke Korea. I think that would be like long ass fucking way in the future.
That's not really the question, because like, so for instance, like I don't this was something that my dad actually said that I really liked, because everybody is expecting this cataclysm, right? We're expecting that the empire is just going to collapse overnight and we're going to be in this Mad Max world or some shit like that. It's not going to be like that. It's more going to be like the UK, where, Britain or the UK, however you want to define it, ruled the world at one point. Like, the sun never set on the British Empire. And over time, that political hegemony no longer made sense. It became, instead of being a unipolar world, it became a multipolar world. And people developed spheres of influence that gradually push people out. And that's what's going to happen to the United States, by the way. So China is going to start pushing us out of their sphere of influence as they become more and more powerful. Some people are going to hold on to us for multilateral treaties in order to try to maintain us so we can be a counterweight against China. If India happens to choose us as an alliance, an allied partner over China, we'll probably be involved in the region for years. And it's the same thing with Europe. As long as Europeans continue to profit from and kind of tolerate American hegemony, we'll have vested European interest. But we'll see the empire kind of recede without like this like dramatic collapse, I think, personally.
I absolutely agree with that.
I wrote a whole fucking Medium article. What was it, like 6 months ago or some shit? I think I deleted it, but the Twitter post is still up. That was just about like the idea of the collapse of the American empire and like a societal collapse not being a one day it's there, the next day it's not kind of thing. The fact is, I would say that America's been in a state of collapse for quite a while, and continues to go down that route. But
all empires, you reach a level of unsustainability, and then you have to scale back, or collapse. Those are the two options.
Before I forget, there was something in someone's
Gemini.
opening statement where they said that like it's not always that America intervenes for their own interest, and because we're talking about South Korea and Japan, I think it's important to note that like the Korean War, which was like the reference for that, like the Korean War wasn't some act of fucking benevolence by the United States. It was essentially a violent suppression of communism, which Truman was really worried that the Japanese would fall prey to next, and that would like hurt American interests very significantly. So, like, yeah,
Sure.
I can't think of a single conflict that America has been involved in
Sure.
that has been.
Comparing the state of North Korea to South Korea, I'm going to call that benevolent.
Can I
Holy crap!
can I step in and just be like,
fucking no, because he wasn't done for it. And the state of North Korea is partially due to what happened during the fucking Korean War. Like you can't look at the state of North Korea and go, oh well, that's what it was definitely going to turn into, because like they ended up with they had, what was it, like 80% of their fucking population killed.
It was like 20%, which is still not great.
They fled to like a strong centralized government because they believed that was what they needed. And
Mix, come on.
I'm an anarchist, so like I'm not fucking
this is the game. This is the game that I always play with fucking communists, and I'm happy that we finally get to do it. Okay, so I'm an anarcho-communist. I don't like authoritarianism. Authoritarianism bad, mass slaughter bad, but I am a communist, and capitalism is just an immoral system, and it needs to be taken down.
I'm not playing that game. I'm not justifying the decisions of the North Koreans.
But seriously, do we have any historical examples of a socialist society that remained libertarian?
I think
any historical example.
I'm not playing the give me an example, blah blah blah. What I'm saying is,
why not?
You cannot. But why? Because it's fucking besides the point, and you're derailing.
Not besides the point. If there's never been a historically good libertarian socialist society that's ever worked, that's pertinent to the historical conversation.
Yes, there are numerous socialist and anarchist societies that have worked.
We're gonna try Jack. We're gonna try Wired. Then we're gonna see if Doopy wants to add anything. But go ahead, Jack.
Every time I say something, it gets derailed into idiocy.
So basically, I just want to step in and to say that like this seems like a problem that would largely be solved if the U.S. didn't have to constantly prop up its capitalistic intentions around the globe. Maybe we could solve this by embracing some form of market socialism. Just throwing that idea out there. I needed to make you facepalm at least once in this conversation, Tiberius D, or I wouldn't be doing my lefty job, okay?
True!
And the other aspect of this is that, like, I don't think Mix was, like, trying to defend North Korea, though I know there are lefties out there who do that. Just explaining that there are like knockback effects of like the US coming in to do certain actions, and like there is a degree to which certain political reactions to like US imperialism result in authoritarianism. And like the other aspect is like how to what extent is like democratic freedom really valued under US imperialism anyway, when we're willing to work with authoritarian dictatorships, and like how valuable is this distinction really when like we work with Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabian's a fucking monarchy. Like
I mean, you ended up propping up at the end of the fucking Korean War as well. Like
Operation
you were
Cyclone.
you're popping up literal fascists in the fucking South Korean government. So don't fucking sit here telling me like the whole point of my bringing that up was to say that like America intervening in the Korean War and the way that they did and the way that they treated North Korea afterwards cannot be separated from what North Korea turned into. Do you think that North Korea is going to have as many fucking problems as it currently does without like US sanctions? Of course it's not. They're going to be able to feed their people a lot better if they can trade freely with other nations. Like, I'm not saying it won't be an authoritarian hellhole, but America does have an effect on what on what North Korea is like.
I just want to continue with my point. Like when it comes to like,
Sorry,
no, it's all good. When it comes to places like why have all these socialist countries like moved towards more strong government relations? Why haven't they implemented actual socialist policies where the workers control the means of production rather than the state controlling the means of production? A lot of it does tend to be in reaction to these outside influences. When like Cuba gets blockaded for like 50 fucking years by the largest economic force on the planet, yeah, they're gonna have to go through some extreme measures, and it's no surprise that in 2020 they're not like a wealthy Caribbean nation.
but they are still doing really, really fucking well in some very key areas.
But I also don't want to. I also don't want to make it. I also don't want to. I'm not saying that authoritarianism good, democracy bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that there are knock-on effects of different, diplomatic and foreign relation policies, and this could be one of them.
So can I go? Sorry, I'll let everybody else go.
Wired next. Then we'll check in with Beauty. Then we'll fill in with Tiberius. All right.
I feel bad to dish out counterpoints, especially since I think Riverboat Jack pretty much said what I was trying to get at, but it was just essentially this point, which is that MX Vivian Wolf's point was not to like steelman the North Korean empire in any way, shape, or form. I think she was just simply trying to elucidate the fact that the United States has been involved since the Cold War in propping up South Korea over North Korea at the behest of North Korea. And never, ever once, I don't think, until recent times have we extended or attempted to extend any sort of diplomatic relations towards North Korea. So there's a litany of instances in which we've been involved in like subversive attacks and like trying to carpet bomb them under Truman. So it just feels really short-sighted for you to sort of like try to go down name me an example of a communist utopia that works when she just simply points out that, North Korea is not necessarily like a prop that came out of nowhere, right? That they are a product of, to some extent, their environmental designs, and that the United States was certainly involved in that. And I feel like it's very, very weaselly for you to like attack her as a result of that.
It seems to be only sort of like strongman authoritarian communist regimes that really sort of like stand this test of time. Because if you don't have like a state with a strong sort of emphasis on having a military that can defend the nation from attack, what happens is America comes in and fucking like stages a goddamn coup and like gets rid of their democratically elected leaders.
Listen,
so, yeah,
guys, come on. I've been patient for 5 or 10. Sorry, Tiberius, go, but like I'm very much ready to go.
You will have your chance, I promise you. But before that, it was Doobie. Doobie, do you have something you want to add?
I've been pretty quiet throughout the entire thing because I think Tiberius and Counterpoints are doing a really good job of expressing my opinion on this topic. But I just wanted to say, we're kind of harping on, the U.S. intervened and there's blowback, and we now have these countries that are more authoritarian now, and does the U.S. care about democratic principles if they're overturning elections? I don't give a fuck about democracies in other nations, right? I don't really care. If other nations tend to be more authoritarian because U.S. comes along and topples their government and props up a dictator, I don't care about the U.S. working with monarchies or theocracies or fascist nations, whatever it is, right? So long as we're serving the interests of the United States and its people, right? I think that's the goal. That's all that matters here for me, at least. And if in that, right, we can eke out a little benefit for everybody else to keep everyone happy, that's fine.
I mean,
Okay.
it's just straight up American exceptionalism, isn't it? Like, I don't care
Yeah, of course.
how many brown people die as long as
Wait, this
I
has
get
nothing
to
to do
have a
with
big.
brown. Don't make this a racial thing. It has nothing to do with brown people. I'm brown. There are plenty of brown Americans.
I
Don't make this about brown
not-
people dying or brown. That's fucking stupid. This is not a racial argument.
America makes a racial thing, dude, by fucking treating the global South in the way that it does. So
nothing
it
to do with
doesn't
race.
fucking.
There's nothing to do with race.
Guys,
I don't
come on,
care.
I'm being so patient.
I'm not saying I'm not saying
Counterpoints go, and I'll take it.
stop bringing up
Yeah,
stupid.
Okay, you'll go last then, Tiberius? Okay.
Yeah, I'll go next.
Counterpoints.
Okay, so here's I have a few beefs, and I will let me go ahead and concede with an olive branch, and I'll try to be as fast as I fucking can. Okay, the one of the times that I realized that Americans were not the good guys in history and we had like a unilateral right to run the world is specifically Korean War history. We literally took nationalist level war policies that we had in World War II, where we literally just thought of civilians as an extension of the state and therefore deserving of slaughter. And we did that in North Korea. I don't agree with Mix that it was 80% of the population, but it was 30% of the population, which I think was like 2 to 3 million people at the time, that we purposefully bombed to shit. Literally, if there was a hut in North Korea, we bombed it because it was still standing up. Literally, North Korean or American generals were actually complaining that they ran out of targets to bomb because they had literally bombed all of the civilian centers. So your point about like Korea as a product of its environment is well taken, okay? But this is where I don't concede any ground whatsoever. The Soviet Union, authoritarian. PRC, authoritarian. North Korea, authoritarian. Even hegemonic empires of communist philosophy all became authoritarian nightmares and ultimately became better extensions of fascism than they were communism. And this is why you don't trade with communist nations, is because you actually enable them to become more powerful. This is the exact problem that we have with the PRC right now, or the CCP, whatever you want to call it. We normalized trade in 1976 immediately after they butchered between 5 million and 3 million of their own citizens in a fucking thought crime spree. And we normalized trade relations because it was in our self-interest. Now we have them committing, at the very least, a cultural genocide, if not an ethnic genocide, that we ignore for our fucking economic benefit. So frankly, while I am a realist about global power, I am also disgusted by America's sense of pragmatism, that we are basically ignoring something that we can at least draw some parallels to Nazi Germany, and yet nobody blinks a fucking eye about it. So
it strengthens my point that America isn't some fucking like benevolent mother
I've
figure.
never argued that it's moral.
I've
never argued that it's moral. My only argument was that it was better than the alternative. That was my only argument.
Not you, just other people on the panel did earlier. So the only strengthens my point that it's not some benevolent mother figure in the world and not fucking intervening to make the world a better place. They're intervening to make America richer, basically, and more to the point, America's rich people richer.
We agree on this point, but then we disagree on whether or not that is a good thing and if other countries have reaped real benefits from American empire. And then that's where I'll stop and I'll.
Well, I think it's a real toss-up, isn't it? Like there are definitely benefits for the countries that America has intervened in at some point, but there are also great fucking harms. And there are also, like I said, democratically elected governments have been overthrown, potentially decent fucking socialist nations that haven't had a chance to form because America fucking murdered them in their cradle.
So what we'll do is we'll start with Tiberius for our closing statements on this. And you can also shout yourself out if you'd like during this. And remember, to everyone who's watching, the stream is not over. Even though we may be replacing this group of people, we're going to start with another group. We're going to do our walk-on panel. We got a lot of people in here who want to jump in on these topics. We'd love to hear you guys out. So stick around. Stream is not ending. The stream is not ending. Oh, God, the stream is not ending. Start with Tiberius.
All right, so I'm going to reach out to Vivian Wolf on this one because not only did I kind of put her in a box, which was absolutely not cool, but also she gave me a hard counter, which was supporting the Syngman Rhee government. And one of the big issues that I really have is that, yes, the United States definitely doesn't have a consistency on any kind of benevolency. And one of my big concerns with how the American empire is ran is that we have actively thrown over democratic regimes that maybe didn't agree with us a lot, but great example being Iran in what we used to call Persia in the early 1950s, which we could have brought into the American family like we did Europe, but instead we threw in the Shah and we get the Iranian Revolution later. And we've done this with a lot of states that probably came back to bite us, and I have serious criticisms of that. Hindsight's 2020, but that is the biggest point against my camp by a country mile. I fully acknowledge that. I hope we can change that, especially if we have to do Cold War II electric boogaloo against China. On the other hand, as far as addressing myself, is that I'm Tiberius D. I'm a geopolitical forecaster and Twitch streamer here on Twitch politics streamer here on Twitch. I talk geopolitics, if you may have noticed. I take econ and political science and demography and geography, and I warp them all into this weird spiderweb mesh that brings out the world in which I see it. That's where we were, where we are now, and where I think we're going. I talk a lot about that, but I also do a Puna show very similar to Mr. Prime. He kind of inspired me to do it in the way that he does it. If you want to come join our family, I've got a wonderful community of a lot of people. I've got a right-wing panel on Wednesdays, a veterans panel on Sundays, and then everything else is freeform. I've got plenty of people on the left, plenty of people on the right. Some of the people from here have been on there. Great community, great time. Would love to have you.
All right, everyone, check out Tiberius D. A link is in the channel. Thank you all. Thank you, Tiberius, for coming through.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was interesting talk. All right, I will go to Riverboat Jack.
So I guess just final thoughts.
Recognizing why she's an excellent streamer.
Okay,
She's
no
still
final
muted,
thoughts.
by the way.
Sorry.
Oh wait, am I?
She's still
I am
muted.
muted. There we go. All right. Do I get final thoughts on the topic? I forgot. I
Yep.
forgot. Okay, cool.
And
Final thoughts on the topic. Definitely there are possibilities of different hegemonic powers emerging that could do a lot worse shit than the United States does, though I think we should not take that light. And while we shouldn't take that lightly, I think we also need to recognize that historically there's, like Tiberius D was saying, like Mix was saying, there's a whole lot of awful shit that the United States has done. For example, just as one example, in Indonesia in 2017, it was revealed that the United States was behind over 1 million killings of communists for thought crimes in the country. So when we're talking about this, all hands are not clean. We have our own concentration camps here in the United States right now, it's bad shit all around. Okay. My argument to fix this would largely be that we need to abandon the system that has brought us here to this point where it's just bad shit from the top to the bottom. It's taken us a long way, but let's build a better world together. Let's adopt some worker co-ops. Let's pursue economic democracy. Let's make the world a better place. So that's generally what I talk about over on my channel, Riverboat Jack. I'm a market socialist. I talk about decommodification and socialism, and how we can deal with those big scary robots that are coming down in the future to rule us all. So, yeah.
Well, we can welcome our robotic overlords. That's what we'll do.
Yeah,
that's what I do.
We can welcome them even better if we're all in worker co-ops and can collectively reap the benefits of robots.
Yeah. So we'll have no disrespecting of our great and merciful robot overlords. Okay. But thank you, Riverboat Jack. Riverboat Jack's link is in chat. Please, everyone, go follow her. She's fantastic, actually. I always enjoy having her. She's a whole bunch of fun to have on my panels. Thank you so much. Next is Wired. Wired, thanks for coming through, especially since we haven't talked much, but it was really kind of you to stop by.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. We're just doing closing thoughts, or
closing thoughts. You can shout yourself out, whatever you want to do.
Sure, sweet. So yeah, this is a great discussion. Honestly, even if it got a little heated at times, I enjoyed every single one of your guys' comments, including yours, Doobies. Anyways, I guess yeah, I'm twitch.tv/wireguitar with no S. I do politics now, I guess primarily. Kind of back and forth between games, but trying to get back into political discussions and roundtables or just in general like one-on-one debates. So if anybody even on this panel wants to have a conversation about anything we talked about tonight in a more intimate setting, I would be happy to tackle any of the topics. It'd be great to also talk about that bonus topic sometime. Although, yeah, we'll have to do it soon because those Georgia State runoffs are going to be happening soon. But anyways, that's who I am. And yeah, thanks again for letting me on, Brian.
That's a good point. I should maybe like make it an actual. Yeah, maybe you should definitely do it like next week or something. It'll make sense. Maybe. All right. Next, we have Counterpoints. Just want to say again, Counterpoints. Who actually, I ask for it every week. I very rarely get it, but Counterpoints continuously does offer me topic suggestions. So helpful. I won't stop giving you praise for that. Thank you so much. It really does help. Thank you, Counterpoints, and go ahead. Let the world know about yourself.
Yeah, so in reference to this, it's literally just in the last subject, it's literally just comparing us to the alternative. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I do respect everybody here, including Mix, and I don't want to deny any kind of evil that the United States has done, because as much as I might not be an idealist or think that some things are achievable, that doesn't mean that we don't push for them. That doesn't mean that we don't strive for them. That doesn't mean that we don't try to build a better world. So I'm interested in that project as well, even if we disagree on how to get there or what that looks like. For me personally, my name is Connor. I run a small but very quickly growing YouTube channel named Counterpoints. You can find me with a whole bunch of debates and streams and all that kind of stuff. I love doing this stuff. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to continue to do this, and everybody here was awesome, so thank you for hanging out. I really appreciate it.
Okay, sure. Thanks once again, my friend. Counterpoint is link is in chat. Oh, guys, if you also have any sort of link that you want to advertise for anything else, like it'll be free to throw into my chat. Let people know if there's something you want them to go to your Twitter or whatever. Okay. Next would be last username. Last username who, man, good guy. Always enjoy having him here. Last username who is bringing I guess the fashion model angle here, because I mean this right here, this is not just anyone can pull it off. Well, what's going on top of your head, right? You're definitely pushing the bounds of fashion here on Twitch.
Really? I thought it was pretty tame by Twitch standards, but sure. Say that.
Well, not your shirt anyway, right? The shirt's pretty standard.
I'm working on the shirt. All right. Am I the only person here who supports free trade with China? It's kind of sad. But yeah, I mean, if you're worried about Cold War II, I mean, the Cold War I was ended largely by the appeal of American consumerism, and if you take away the Chinese access, the access of the Chinese people to American stuff, you're just going to lose a ton of leverage that could be used to end or avoid a second Cold War. But that's a whole other topic, I guess. So. Yeah, I'm last username. I stream in theory. In practice, I don't do it very much. I mostly do these kind of panels, which are fun. And this one was fun. It's good, nice sort of low key, in-depth discussion, interesting topics, and so thanks a lot for having me. And thanks to you guys for the good talk.
Last username's link is in chat. Everyone go check them out. Yeah, last username. This is definitely our more low key. Usually, a lot more screaming, a lot more hurt feelings. It was actually not bad compared to how we usually do things. But yeah, thank you for coming through. And also, like in terms of free trade with China, my feelings on that changes often. I guess it depends really on the details.
Multilateral trade agreements. That's what we're all about here. Okay. Ask them to stop abusing the Uyghurs, and then we can talk.
Yeah. But yeah.
Can I?
No, sorry. You gotta move on. I want to respect all your time. But there's a walk-on panel afterwards. If you want to add something on, you can.
Okay, because I forgot to bring up a point, and I would love to bring it up real quick on the walk-on panel.
Okay. Know nothing. Thanks for being here. Know nothing. Thanks for proving that your name is always incorrect. That you know many things. I don't know. That was bad.
Yeah, not sure about that one.
Thank you for being here, buddy. Shout yourself out and give a final thought.
Yeah, this was. I'm pretty ignorant on foreign policy stuff, so this was interesting to listen to. Thanks for letting me be a part of this. I mostly listened to that section. Yeah, I'm Know Nothing on Twitter and Twitch. Check me out. Yeah, thanks for having me, Prime.
Awesome.
I just want to say his Twitter's fucking lit. I've been following that shit for a while. It's fucking great.
Everyone says that about Know Nothings. I mean, I'm Twitter friends with Twitter friends. I follow him on Twitter, but I don't use Twitter, so I don't see any of this. But everyone tells me the legend of Know Nothing.
Dude, he's pissing off all the right people. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I have some fun on there.
I gotta check out. Hey, throw your link in chat for people if you would Know Nothing. Let people know. I need to check it out a bunch because people keep telling me that Know Nothings is like the best in terms of Twitch politics. You're number one. So I gotta check it out one day. All right. Last but not least, that creature from Beyond the Deep, in the corner of your screen there. Yeah, that would be Doobie. Doobie, thank you as always for coming through. Thank you as always for haunting the nightmares of children. Thank you for being you, Doobie. Any words you'd like to say?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on first off. I really appreciate getting to talk to all of you, even though you're mostly wrong about just about everything. Please stick around, people in chat, for the walk-on panel. Paul's blog, he said he'd be there to yell at me, so I expect to see you there. I'll try to stick around for a bit for that to happen. If you want to talk to me, you can go to the Politics Discord server. This is discord.gg/politics. You can go in there, tell me how great I am, or yell at me if you're a dumb person. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right. Yeah. He's the head of the Politics Discord server. The link is in chat. If no matter what it is that you feel like arguing about, if you feel like arguing about something, go into the Politics Discord server. You will find someone who has the opposite opinion of you and will argue with you. And then you'll find someone with the same opinion about that you have, and they'll still argue with you. So it's a lot of fun in there. Go check it out. As always, dude, we really do appreciate you coming through. It's really nice of you. Okay, so we're going to roll into our walk-on panel now. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate you spending your time and effort with my community. And any of you are welcome. Excuse me?
What? No, nothing's fine.
Did I skip you?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, shit. Oh, man, that sucks. Mixed Vivian Wolf, I apologize. It was not my intention. You know that. Mixed Vivian Wolf, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. Like the whole panel. If I got frustrated at any point, I think it's mostly because like I tried to say something and then somebody would bring up like some really random fucking bullshit point, which I'd then have to like defend, and we'd get deflected away from the original point that I was trying to make. It was very frustrating when that was happening quite a lot. But otherwise, I'm Mixed Vivian Wolf on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm an anti-fascist historian and extremist researcher, and if you want to talk about history, fascists, cults, whatever, follow me on Twitter, drop me a DM, and I'll happily come on whatever Twitch show or whatever it is to talk about, especially fascists and cults. I love that shit. All right, thanks, Prime.
And thank you, Mixed Vivian Wolf. Didn't mean to skip you, of course, dear friend. As always, always happy to have you here. So anyone here is welcome to join my walk-on panel. If not, that's okay. Thanks for spending a little time with us. Have a good one.
Yeah, take care, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Bye.
Good night.
All right. How's everyone doing? Just gonna hop out of this place. How do leave? Gonna click the leave button. There we go. I'm gone. Now you see nothing. You are condemned to darkness. Hello, everybody. My name is the Dark Void, from whence I came. You can all see my background. Cool. All right. Getting my camera up. Hello. Hi. Hey. How's it going? Hi. Bloop. There we go. Woo! All right. I feel like that panel went pretty fucking great. Apparently, we now have a Minecraft server. So if any of you like playing Minecraft and want to be in the official Riverboat Gang Minecraft server, you can come to Discord, where we have one, apparently. Now, I feel like that panel went really well. I feel like I had some kind of yikesy moments. I feel like I might have said some takes that were too hot, that flew too close to the sun, as it were. Yeah, hi everybody. Also, we have a new emote. We have the Riverboat Hype emote, so you can get one of them's now. Cute little version of me going, yay! All right. Overall, I feel pretty good about that panel. I feel like I had kind of a weak position on the first question about like statues and signs, and we've been talking about statues and signs for so fucking long now. I'm so tired of it. But on the other two questions, I feel like I did well on the economic question, because my position is pretty simple: tax the fucking rich. And I did okay on the American imperialism one, even though I didn't get to say my full point because I had a mind fart. Surprisingly, the conservatives didn't start chanting. Yeah, that was a pretty fucking conservative panel. And I think that the argument of there being like a power vacuum, might be a valid one, but I think that that's something that's only solved by getting rid of the economic system that pushed us to do imperialism in the first place, which is, moving to socialism. So, like, how will we know whether or not Black Lives Matter if the street signs don't tell us? I know, right? Oh yeah, Counterpoints was being very patient. Part of the issue is that, like, he, right, that's all he was saying. The issue is that a lot of people who take the position that Counterpoints does, who's going to put up a VOD? I will. I always put up a VOD of, like, the panel discussions. I like Counterpoints too. The main issue with Counterpoints' argument is that, like, the possibility of something the possibility of something being worse does not negate, like, attempts to improve it, right? And part of improving on imperialism would be either to adopt China's method of imperialism, which is by essentially extending economic aid with no apparent strings attached to build diplomatic goodwill 30 years down the road, on top, or withdrawing from imperial activities and letting countries, like, dictate their own future, the right to self-determination and freedom. So, like, there are ways out of this that aren't just simply leave a power vacuum for China, because you know what China's doing right now? They're doing imperialism. They're just not doing it with troops on the ground. They're not doing it with military might in a lot of cases. In some cases they are, in the South China Sea, for example. But when it comes to places like Africa, they aren't, like, building military outposts. They're building infrastructure for developing cities. He was giving some super fast takes when it came to drugs. Yeah. A ghost. I'm not surprised. I think that in his heart he is a lefty. The main issue is he was a cop for like 14 years or something like that. So like he has a cop's way of viewing certain problems like drugs. And I think that largely that becomes a roadblock to him when it comes to moving left on certain issues. But you know what? We'll keep working at it. We'll get him eventually, okay? Because he's exactly the type of conservative that I want to be able to convert into lefties. If at all possible. China seems very anti-US imperialism, but pro-China imperialism, and I don't know that much about China. Well, absolutely, Rancid Vile Boy. China is pro its own power growing and pro US power not growing. Deep down in his heart, yes. I talked with him about socialism a while, like last week. I think the VOD went up just a couple days ago on YouTube. And for the most part, on a lot of socialist positions, like workers controlling the means of production, yeah, he has some extremely lefty takes. But there are other issues that, you know, we'll need some more time on, you know?